of familiar faces, worn out places, worn out faces, bright and early for the daily races, going nowhere, going nowhere. Their tears are filling up their glasses, no expression, no expression. Hide my head, I wanna drown my sorrow. No tomorrow, no tomorrow. And I find it kind of funny, I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. I find it hard to tell you, I find it hard to take. When people run in circles, it's a very, very bad world. Bad world. Children waiting for the day they feel good. Happy birthday, happy birthday. And to feel the way that every child should sit and listen, sit and listen. Went to schooling, now was very nervous. No one knew me, no one knew me. Hello teacher, tell me what's my lesson. Look right through me, look right through me. And I find it kind of funny, I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. I find it hard to tell you, I find it hard to take. The people run in circles, it's a very, very bad world. Bad world. In the bad world. Around me are familiar faces, worn out places, worn out faces, bright and early for the daily races, going nowhere, going nowhere. Their tears are filling up their glasses, no expression, no expression. Hide my head, I wanna drown my sorrow. No tomorrow, no tomorrow. And I find it kind of funny, I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. I find it hard to tell you, I find it hard to take. When people run in circles, it's a very, very bad world. Bad world. Children waiting for the day they feel good. Happy birthday, happy birthday. And to feel the way that every child should sit and listen, sit and listen. Went to schooling, now was very nervous. No one knew me, no one knew me. Hello teacher, tell me what's my lesson. Look right through me, look right through me. And I find it kind of funny, I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. I find it hard to tell you, I find it hard to take. The people run in circles, it's a very, very bad world. Bad world. And Lord, you know, bad world. Around me are familiar faces, worn out places, worn out faces, bright and early for the daily races, going nowhere, going nowhere. Their tears are filling up their glasses, no expression, no expression. Hide my head, I wanna drown my sorrow. No tomorrow, no tomorrow. And I find it kind of funny, I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. I find it hard to tell you, I find it hard to take. When people run in circles, it's a very, very bad world. Bad world. Children waiting for the day they feel good. Happy birthday, happy birthday. And to feel the way that every child should sit and listen, sit and listen. Went to schooling, now was very nervous. No one knew me, no one knew me. Hello, teacher, tell me what's my lesson. Look right through me, look right through me. And I find it kind of funny, I find it kind of sad. The dreams in which I'm dying are the best I've ever had. I find it hard to tell you, I find it hard to take. The people run in circles, it's a very, very bad world. Bad world. And Lord, you know, bad world. You done? You done? You're not done. Ferris welcomes you all to stream. Okay. 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 That's enough. That's enough. Come on. Ferris. What up, though? Slight change in plans from previously stated schedule is that we will not be talking to Tellerks today. Tellerks has apparently not been feeling well and asked if we could reschedule for Monday, so we'll be talking with Tellerks on Monday. And let me just verify something real quick. Okay. What up, Boyd? What up, Adam? Are you ready to settle? What up, Brian? If you're ready to settle, you can come back down. Otherwise, you like you are very excited. All right, so tonight's movie night in the Discord. No, tonight's movie night in the Discord will be the original Ghost in the Shell, and we might do like we might do a thing. Is this a bit? Are you doing a bit? Yeah, Teller said that he didn't have time to look into the whole thing that we were going to talk about, and he wanted to. So allegedly going to do a mellow stream for him, and then we'll get back to it on Monday. Yes, the anime from 1995. Yeah. So we're gonna do that, and then we might like follow the Ghost in the Shell thing because there's other stuff, so we might continue on. I don't know. The future is what the future is, and right now we're just gonna deal with the present, and the present is. 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 So, the present is that we are going to talk about the things that are listed in the title. Got a few videos I definitely want to get. There's so much. There is so much. Why is there always so much? Um. So, the zombie apocalypse and world building. Like, one of the categories in the Discord is about world building, right? And what the hell does that have to do with anything? Well, it's not random. World building, when you're telling a story, right? You should have some idea of the world in which the characters exist, and you know those those factors that guide their lives and decisions and everything else. And when you're writing a story, you are moving from a beginning point to an end point, right? And you have an idea of what you want the outcome of the story to be, and you have an idea of what the beginning of the story looks like. And depending on what kind of story you're attempting to tell, it will determine, you know, are the changes that exist within the world small? Are the changes that exist within the world large? What are those changes? So on and so forth. And this has bearing on real life. When you are planning something, when you are making changes in the world, when you are being the change you want to see in the world, any of these kind of things, you are telling a story, right? Now, often if you're doing small changes in your own life, you're telling a story to you. You might document that story as you go with other people, even if you're not writing it down. You might be writing it down. Journaling could be taken as an example of authoring the story of your own life as you go through it. So, y'all know how I feel about the zombie apocalypse. That if you're a longtime viewer, I talked about the zombie apocalypse before, and in the zombie apocalypse, you are likely to be a zombie, right? Highly, you're not going to be Rick Grimes. You're not going to be a hero. You're going to be a zombie. But you should act as if you're going to be a hero. And what planning, and planning is like, not like, I'm not talking about that you should, prepare yourself for the zombie apocalypse, because it's not going to happen. But when you're planning for the zombie apocalypse, what you are also doing is planning for, any kind of disaster that could occur. There's nothing wrong with that. That tends to be beneficial. When they talk about having a plan in case of a fire, this is that same kind of thing. Where is everyone going to meet up? How are you going to make sure that everyone got out of the house? What is the process? All that kind of stuff. It's a good thing. Depending on where you live, your chances of being in some sort of, usually environmental type disaster is going to vary, right? Like, what do you do if it's the wintertime and the power goes out? What do you do if, a hurricane or a tornado comes through? What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? And a little bit of planning goes a long way, because you don't want to figure out your plan as the things are happening, right? Might never occur. Your particular neighborhood might never get hit by a tornado. Your particular neighborhood might never experience a blizzard that could knock out power. Um, there was a snow event in Buffalo many years ago, referred to as the October Surprise, before October Surprise got co opted for national election shenanigans. The October Surprise was an excessively heavy, wet snowfall. Um, and out in front of my house, a old growth tree. We have a lot of old growth trees um, in the city, and an old growth tree took out the power lines. No, 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 no. Hey, so you know. Um, but to be fair, like London caught fire. What was it, last summer? Right, that was a thing. Y'all had that month where like everything was on fire. So, but so the October surprise came. The tree fell. Absolutely murdered some dude's car. Um, but it took out a bunch of power lines, and those power lines, a rather enterprising entrepreneur decided to make some money off copper by collecting up the fallen power lines, and it actually meant that we were without power for about a month. Now, in the short term, we did shenanigans, right? Like we made it all work. A lot of hanging blankets indoors, in doorways, right? A lot of occupying just a single room in a small room, using candles and body heat and everything else to try and keep the warm in as much as we were able. Um, and then once, like after a couple of days of that, when it became apparent exactly how long it was going to take to get the power on, then you move to other areas, right? Like areas where you have a better support structure or, what have you. Same thing that happens like in a zombie apocalypse, right? The zombie apocalypse happens and people hole up and defend their little base, and then, okay, this is not sustainable. We need to move to a better area. And then they do that. You have to stop. I'm petting you, right? You keep getting up. That's the problem. If you can lay down and I will continue to pet you to keep you occupied, or you can move. But if you move, you can't move to rub the mic stand because then I won't pet you, right? Think about what you want. Think about your goals, Ferris. So then, so that was an example. There's an event that happened within my life, and though I was not prepared for that particular event, I am a child of the Cold War, so I have been preparing for, nuclear winter, for quite some time, and so I had a rough outline of things to do in order to make it through the short term, and then what to do for the long term, and so on and so forth. And there's two ways to go about doing these things. And one is where you identify your current position and your end state, and you work forward towards that end state. Or, and this is what I like to ask of people who might disagree with me on a particular point, where you start at the end state and work backwards towards where you are now. And what I ask is that if you disagree with something, by all means, I'm open to challenge, I'm open to discussion. This is not an issue. But I would like you to think about it in the sense of start at the end point and then work your way backwards to how we could get there. So at least you have an idea of a potential possibility of what that could look like. It's easy to say, oh, the AI is never going to take the jobs. The robots are never going to take the jobs. It's very easy to say that. But if you pause a second, I'm not saying that you have to change your mind, just saying pause a second and think about if it did happen, what would it look like as it manifested itself? If I'm wrong, right? If I'm wrong about all this, then the worst case for you is that you have gained some knowledge about these AI tools, you have learned some skills, you have prepared for something, and you'll be better adapted to technological change as it moves forward. That is the worst case. Because I'm not telling you to run out and quit your job. I'm not telling you to do any of that stuff. I'm telling you to prepare for the incremental change as it comes. And this way, it won't shock you. You won't be caught flat-footed. You'll be observing for all the potential things that could happen. And then, if I'm right, same thing. So let's do some news. All around me are familiar faces. There you go. Get comfortable. Take a nap. Okay, so this is this is developing. Jimmy Apples reported earlier that GPT 4.5 is scheduled to drop sometime in December, and there's an alleged pricing document to go along with it, right? And then there's futurist Flower, who allegedly confirmed that. I guess I should give them a follow. We'll see how that goes. Futurist Flower also shared what appears to be a leaked document from inside Google, saying that because GPT 4.5 is about to drop, Google is rushing the Gemini API out the door. More on that, unless you're in the Discord, and then you already know what I'm going to say. Finally, Futurist Flowers shared this GPT 4.5 pricing document, but added the content of the screenshot seems to be largely correct, but none of my sources can currently verify whether it's a genuine draft. So this is that, and then this is the alleged thing. 6 cents per 1,000 tokens, 12 cents at GPT 4.5 at 64K, and 0.012 cents for GPT 4.5 with audio and speech. So on and so forth. And then there's some other ones on here. Could be a thing, could not be a thing. We will have to see, and we're going to learn some more on that today because not only do I have some additional information on it, but there is some video from Matt Wolf that I would like to get to. Do you remember when we covered the Animate Anyone, where you could take a picture of someone and then animate them using a wireframe? Well, there's now Outfit Anyone. Excuse me. I'm not sick. I just have like post-nasal drip. Because the temperature keeps going up and down, it's triggering some plants to do plant stuff, and it's irritating as fuck. So, anyways, Outfit Anyone, Animate Anyone. So you got a person, you got the garment. This is the person wearing the garment, and then animation. And this is all generative artificial intelligence. And this is why one of the concerns from the modeling community is that their jobs are at risk, because they can be. Because it doesn't need to be a person, right? Like, I could render this person in Leonardo or Midjourney with where they're at with photorealism, and none of this requires an actual human being. These were sent or requested by me from Zach was doing a stream talking about robots and stuff. This is typeset.io, and I haven't done anything with this, but this is SciSpace is an incredible AI-powered tool to help you understand research papers better. It can explain and elaborate most academic text in simple words. Extract data from PDFs, literature review, read with Copilot, paraphraser. Like, how does climate change impact biodiversity? See what we get. So there's a variety of PDFs about it. And you can ask Copilot, and then using Copilot, we could have a conversation with these PDFs. And then this one, perplexity.ai, this is also another science-related. Like, one of these is specifically for academic papers, but they're both science-related. And then here's Copilot built into it. This is good, right? Like, again, the issue of not being able to consume all the data that you need to consume in order to do your stuff. Like we saw either Wednesday or Monday about the transparent wood. The person published their paper and it just sat there, and then the current person stumbled across it. We need to stop stumbling across these papers. We need have the papers in a place where people who are doing research can access that information and utilize that information in order to do more. And then these were a couple of videos. What was it?
For the last 8.
Oh, this might have been from the Discord. 23 AI tools you won't believe are free. I just so that y'all know, I don't like this could absolutely have value, and I'm not saying don't submit anything because I don't like, right? None of that. I just when this is a clickbaity title, and clickbaity titles rub me the wrong way. But again, not to say don't submit anything, even if it has a clickbaity title. It just I want to be upfront and clear with y'all about that stuff. This is the vid Zach got those tools from. There we go. Thank you. See, Adam knows. I can only do so much. I can only remember so much. I appreciate everyone who assists me with my memory because, you know. So, Globus does not have his own free tools list because I don't believe in duplication of services, and I feel like FutureTools.io does a good job of exactly that. What I do in Discord is when I find free lessons about AI, like to learn to create or learn to, understand artificial intelligence, I will find those and I will curate them into that section of the Discord. All around. Maybe I am sick. Maybe I'm dying. Maybe we're all dying. A new Nature paper shows that LLMs. What up, Reed? And Elder Gang. Always Elder Gang. A new Nature paper shows that LLMs can create new knowledge. This is mathy nerd shit. A model. No, I'm talking. A model discovered new solutions for the CAPSET problem, a long-standing open problem in mathematics. This is another thing AI skeptics said AI would never be able to do. And by the way, we are not going to be doing any more dunks on videos around AI and art. I feel I've said everything that I need to say. There's nothing more. I don't think that it contributes anything more to the conversation unless something new happens, right? Or if somebody wants to come and talk about it, we can talk about it. But I'm not going to pick out videos from the, especially because the youngest ones that I can find are from 2 months ago, right? But that notwithstanding, this is one of the things that AI skeptics around art said is that AI cannot create anything new. It can only synthesize or copy or, whatever stuff that has already been done. This is absolutely incorrect. And this is a demonstration of that being incorrect. I was laughing at Zygote's ChatGPT responses to what he should do better. I'm like, that's accurate AF. I mean, there's what you should do, and what you can do, and what you want to do. Right? Like these are 3 separate things. Apparently, what I should do in order to get a bunch of viewers is, put on a tube top. No, I got you. But like, that is not what I'm going to do, right? Like, I am not going to engage in spectacle. And this is no shade to anybody. I don't give a fuck. I really don't. I am not sharing an audience with people who want to watch whatever they want to watch. My audience is composed of people who want to show up and hear me talk about AI and learn from me about AI and learning from the community about AI. There is only one place to do that. The only competition that I am, even when I post like line go up pictures in the Discord, that is the only person that I am competing with is myself. No booty shaking, right? If somebody drops 10 Discords, then I will do a little dance to Globus AI singing Despacito, right? That's what I'm offering. That's what's on the table. Genuine question for skeptics. Does this update your beliefs? If not, what evidence would? This is a great question, right? Like, do you really, is your argument, is your point that you're making a point, or is it you don't like AI and you're just going to use this as a stand-in and then, whatever. Every previous technology in history, and this is what I keep saying about the difference between the current automation wave increasing the productivity of the worker. In the previous waves have done that. The current wave is replacing the actual worker themselves. Every previous technology in history could only replicate our ideas, like radio or the printing press. It could make copies and disseminate the music or the poems or the novels that some human wrote. Now we have a technology that can create completely new ideas, and it can do so at a scale far beyond what humans are capable of. And this from MIT Technology Review, talking about the Google DeepMind uses a large language model to solve an unsolvable math problem. Now, they had to throw away most of what it produced. So this is akin to the discoverability issue. But there was gold among the garbage. Fun search, so-called because it searches for mathematical functions, now because it's fun, continues a streak of discoveries in fundamental math and computer science that DeepMind has made using AI. First, Alpha Tensor found a way to speed up calculation at the heart of many different kinds of code, beating a 50-year record. Then Alpha Dev found ways to make key algorithms use trillions of times a day run faster. Yet those tools did not use large language models. Built on top of DeepMind's game-playing AI AlphaZero, both solve math problems by treating them as if they were puzzles in Go or chess. The trouble is that they are stuck in their lanes. Alpha Tensor is great at matrix multiplication, but basically nothing else. Same. I'm like, it's accurate if you want to appeal to every single person, which isn't necessarily your goal. Sometimes you don't need to appeal to the entire crowd because the larger crowd is operating on faulty assumptions or principles. COVID in this instance. 100%. Like, I mean, and that's why I don't waste time arguing with randos, right? If someone says something, if I'm in a chat or whatever, and someone says something that's inaccurate, based on their behavior within my perception, I make a first decision where I'm like, am I going to bother to correct this person, right? and provide them with some new information. Then, if I do that, I either don't and then I just ignore them, or I do, and then based on their next response, I will either say, well, maybe you should come by the show and you can watch what's actually going on, as opposed to your limited set of information, which is providing you with faulty conclusions. What up, Ponder Monkey? Or I wish them luck with all their future endeavors, right? Like, I'm not here to convince everyone. That is a thankless task and what I consider a waste of time. I am here to provide information and a, like coordinated space in which we can have conversations around what is happening. I'm not going to argue with every single person who shows up who wants to talk about fundamental issues that we already covered 6 months ago. Like, it's just not worth anyone's time. Uh-oh. I saw the word counter. One quick anecdote to counter the notion of being unable to make new things. I know a basketball trainer who trains college basketball players at WVU. He was talking about on his podcast how he has been using ChatGPT over the last month to brainstorm new and novel moves, techniques. He stated that he gets about a 20% hit rate, but that 20% is huge in basketball. You only get new moves like every 2 years or so. Yeah. Again, like one of the things that I want people to focus on is there are biases, of course, baked into the training data, but there are also opportunities that are missed by humans because of our own biases, right? Like, you have training data, and your training data is automatically going to be flawed because it's automatically going to be very limited. You have one perception, one point of view on which to draw. Even when you read books and everything else, you're only like, what ideas you're going to accept are influenced by all the ideas that you previously accept and your capacity to intake and synthesize and accept new information, right? No matter what, there's going to be limiters there. Even if you're like an open-minded person, the most open-minded person, so on and so forth. The AI doesn't have that same kind of condition. The AI is looking to answer the question, and it will answer the question again in ways that are not necessarily helpful, but humans do that all the time. And it will answer the question in ways that humans would not answer the question, right? Like, remember the cartoon where there was the Lego brick and the blue Lego brick and the red Lego brick. And the request of the AI was, in order to get its reward function, was to get the bottom of the red brick above the top of the blue brick, right? And the AI flipped the red brick over so it would get the reward function, which was not what the experimenter intended. That's not what they wanted. What they wanted was it stacked on top. But even in those errors, that is an idea that might not have occurred to a lot of people, right? What up, Digital? Change your thing, your what you call a color, or is it just that way in Chatterino? Anyways, right? It provided a solution outside of expectation. That is something to also consider, but like the good and the bad of that. But there are a lot of opportunities for the good of that. We also get lazy when we have success, lessening chance of finding multiple solutions. Right. It's always in the last place you look. That kind of thing. Well, yeah, because once you find it, you stop looking, right? So we do that all the time. Once I find a solution to a problem, I am not going to continue looking for different solutions to that problem. I found a solution, now I can move forward. And don't get me wrong, there's value in that. But having a bunch of different possible solutions to a problem give you also like the ability to extrapolate off those solutions for other outcomes as well. So, yeah, if you get up there, then your ears won't hit the mic stand. So FunSearch takes a different tack. Combines a large language model called Cody, a version of Google's PaLM 2 that is fine-tuned on computer code, with other systems that reject incorrect or nonsensical answers and plug good ones back in. I always love this. To be very honest with you, we have hypotheses, but we don't know exactly why this works. In the beginning of the project, we didn't know whether this would work at all. The researchers started by sketching out the problems they wanted to solve in Python, popular programming language, but they left out the lines in the program that would specify how to solve it. That is where FunSearch comes in. It gets Cody to fill in the blanks, in effect, to suggest code that will solve the problem. The second algorithm then checks and scores what Cody comes up with. The best suggestions, even if not correct, are saved and given back to Cody, which tries to complete the program again. Many will be nonsensical, some will be sensible, and a few will be truly inspired. You take those truly inspired ones and you say, okay, take these ones and repeat. After a couple million suggestions and a few dozen repetitions of the overall process, which took a few days, right? I recently made a sourdough bread. And like the process, normally when you make a bread, you kick off the yeast, then you add the flour and salt and whatever, and then you let the dough rest in a bowl for about an hour, and then you turn it out and you give it a knead, and then you form it, and then you put it in whatever form you're going to bake it in, and then you let it rest for another 30 minutes or so, 45 minutes, depending, and then you bake it, right? So it takes a few hours. Made a sourdough bread, and that first part took about 8 hours, and then it had to sit in the refrigerator for 24 hours, and then it got baked. It was a whole different process. So a few days is a long time when you're baking bread, right? A few days is not a long time when you're solving a previously unsolved math problem. FunSearch was able to come up with code that produced a correct and previously unknown solution to the CAPSET problem, which involves finding the largest size of a certain type of set. Imagine plotting dots on graph paper. The CAPSET problem is like trying to figure out how many dots you can put down without 3 of them ever forming a straight line. It's super niche, but important. Mathematicians do not even agree on how to solve it, let alone what the solution is. It is also connected to matrix multiplication, the computation that AlphaTensor found a way to speed up. Terence Tao at the University of California, who has won many of the top awards in mathematics, called the CAPSET problem perhaps my favorite open question. So, AI is doing things that no human has done before. They are doing things in a new way. Again, haven't had the opportunity to mess around with this, but Google has an AI music generator and just yesterday got an update to it. It's not called Bard. I know it's killing you. It's called Music Effects, and it's available for free. And you can use it. And let's see how terrible it sounds. Yeah. I mean, is it good? No. Right? Like, it's kind of chaotic. Is it better than what used to be? 100%. Is it something that you could take portions of, clip out, make a stub, and repeat and turn into an actual track? Yeah. Yeah. So, you go to labs.google, find Music FX category, and click Try It Now. Log in with your Google account, and fire it up and run with it. This is from Greg Brockman. New direction for AI alignment, weak to strong generalization. Promising initial results. We use outputs from a weak model, fine-tuned GPT-2, to communicate a task to a stronger model, GPT-4, resulting in intermediate GPT-3 level performance. So, GPT-2 to supervise GPT-4, which in turn supervises GPT-6, aka AGI, which in turn supervises humans. All hail our GPT-2 overlords. So, interesting development. We'll see what that turns into. Google launched the Gemini Pro API, and if you are, and I don't know enough about API calls to know how valuable this free portion of it is. But if you use 60 queries per minute or less, and that's per minute or less, so one a second, then it's free. So it's a free API in that regard. The pay-as-you-go model is 0.00025 per thousand characters. And that's coming soon. That's not here yet. So Google is definitely going all in on Gemini in spite of the backlash to what happened with their the video that they doctored. Driverless vehicles on limited routes bump along despite U.S. robotaxi scrutiny. So just so you're aware, like it's still a meme where people are talking about the autonomous vehicles are never. It's valuable if you have an API client like a chatbot making multiple queries a minute. Okay. So yeah, people talk about like, oh, it never works. It's actually happening, right? Like there are autonomous vehicles out running around, and you're just not aware of them. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania-based Aurora and California startup Gatik are among companies developing self-driving technology for vehicles that operate on set routes and have largely managed to avoid the public ire robotaxis have faced on busy city streets. This has helped these companies, which mainly develop autonomous technology to equip vehicles, win large new customers like IKEA and Walmart, as well as local governments. Gatik won grocer Kroger and processed food maker Tyson Foods as clients this year. The company operates traditional mid-sized trucks fitted with its autonomous technology that deliver goods on routes that avoid hospitals and schools, and it has been hiring aggressively and plans to deepen its presence in several states. Aurora said it is on track to start hauling freight without a driver between Dallas and Houston by the end of next year. We still think trucking is poised to be the first true scaling rollout of autonomous technology. Burnett said Kodiak was on track next year to start getting on the road without the safety drivers who currently stay behind the wheel. Limiting the risk of deploying across densely populated city, Michigan-based driverless shuttle operator May Mobility aims to complement or replace human-driven transit systems within a specific area of a city. It has struck deals with the local authorities. Building and commercializing driverless vehicles, especially robotaxis, has been harder and costlier than initially imagined and has prompted regulatory concerns, investor anxiety, and public criticism. Detractors complain that robotaxis have disrupted traffic and put people at risk due to erratic driving or abrupt stops in the middle of busy roads, which is not something that humans ever do. Right, and we're going to bring this up again. The outcry has intensified since an October 2nd accident involving a pedestrian who was dragged 20 feet by a Cruise robotaxi after being struck by another vehicle. Right? Point that out. Human did the problem first. Speaking of future of logistics, Einride, a lesser-known name perhaps, is building the future of logistics while keeping humans in the loop. So this is an alternative to a semi-fully autonomous vehicle, right? Watch a little video.
Today, I got to meet the pod. Bruce is what they call him. It is the future.
At the start of the program, what we did for Tiffany was we brought her to the pod in person. During the training process, it was very important for her to really see Bruce in action.
Getting to do that part first is making the remote operating station a lot easier.
Once we walked through that, we moved on to her first remote operating drive. Just going from the cab of a truck to the controls that you see in front of you was definitely a learning curve, but she took to it right away.
Because I am a previous truck driver, I already know what to look out for. It's natural. It's a natural feeling the way they have set it up. I think most truck drivers are going to be apprehensive about this at first, but I think once they see what it's going to do for them, you put it all together and it's going to happen. We've got to do something to protect our planet. I think this is the biggest start to that.
Legislative, judicial, and executive branch.
Slow down.
AI run the government?
We'll get to you in just a second there, Dave. So this is a new type of trucker, one that will have benefited a lot from playing Super Mario Kart or Need for Speed Most Wanted emoji. Seriously, though, this is so clever. The amount of people working as truckers is probably not known to everyone, but numbers are insane. In the U.S. alone, the numbers are plus 3.5 million people working as truck drivers. It's about 1% of the entire population. In Europe, that number is between 6.2 and 6.5 million. So just south of 1% of the population here, too. The biggest impact I've had from being a remote operator is being able to go home every day. Driving a truck is not easy work, especially if you are hauling long distance. You are away from home, sleeping in your cab, sitting still most of the time. By putting humans in the loop of self-driving trucks, Einride operators can have multiple drivers on multiple vehicles. Not dissimilar to military drone operator setup and Imagine. Definitely something similar. Definitely solved the problem of P-bombs on the interstate. That too. Like, you can go to an office, or theoretically, you could do this from home. You know what I mean? Like, it's all about, it's video gaming. It's American Trucker, whatever. What Barrett plays on their stream sometimes, right? Like where you are driving like a video game, but the vehicle exists in the real world. And generally speaking, it could be autonomous, but still have that. One of the concerns about the robo-taxis, right, is that there's, what do you do when something goes wonky and now you got to get a driver to that location to take over the vehicle and get it, unwonky. This would allow someone at a remote station to take control of that vehicle. And this is apparently a Swedish company. Sweden is starting to become very good in the new era of transport. We have Northvolt batteries, Polestar cars, and Einride trucks and logistics. Trucks are not science fiction. They are operated today all over the globe, Europe, US, you name it. They also operate around the clock, equipped with night vision, ensuring the trucks are not having more downtime than required to charge. And so this is another thing you can do. Normally, when you are driving a truck, you are taking it from point A to point B, and you're driving for an extended period of time. There are issues with like the amount of sun that the person gets. There's issues with like, are you tired? How do you feel? How is the quality of your driving at any given point in time? These kind of things. Normal human stuff when applied to a vehicle. What up, Nemesis? So like France, they have curtains in their train here. It wouldn't survive a second. I don't know what that means. Curtains in their trains? as opposed to doors, or as opposed to nothing. But what this allows you is you can have, and again, because you can have somebody watching multiple vehicles, the majority of the time, everything's going to be fine. It's only if it comes into an issue that a human would need to take control, right? Driving down a highway for a long period of time doesn't really require the human to interact with it, especially when you add in things like GPS. Google Maps tells me when I should expect to slow down due to a traffic issue by changing the color of the road on the GPS. So I know ahead of time to be looking for that kind of thing occurring in front of me. So what up, Master Goosey? So I know ahead of time to look out for that, and that way I avoid, any kind of surprise when the vehicle in front of me isn't moving or, puts on its brakes. I maintain my spacing and everything else like a good driver should, in spite of people thinking that me maintaining my space is an opportunity for them to get out of their lane and move into mine. But whatever, this is the world we live in. You're going to have people who can put in just a regular 8-hour day of work driving these trucks or supervising the driving of these trucks, intervening as necessary, and then they go home. The truck can continue to go, but now it's somebody else's job to watch the truck. I think it's awesome. I also think it means that there are going to be less people driving truck. And again, that's 3.5 million jobs in the United States and 6.2 million jobs in Europe. You do the math. Okay. So now, could AGI run the government? This is a long video. This is probably what we're going to be doing for the entire rest of the day. But I got about this far in and felt, in spite of its length, that it was something I wanted to cover on stream. Because it's like right there in, what we've been talking about. Perfect is such a high standard, maybe just better or simply run it. Like, that is I'm with you 100%, right? Like, perfect is the enemy of good enough. And yeah, I don't need driverless vehicles to be perfect. I need them to be better than human drivers. That would be sufficient for me. Let's go, Dave. Hit me.
AI run the government? So this question actually came from one of my Patreon supporters. So thank you, Spectral Valkyrie, for this question. But basically the idea was, okay,
as an aside, right? I just want to draw back again to how much you'll have to talk to my manager, to how much I enjoy how the internet allows people to designate themselves, right? Like, to me and to Twitch, you are Nemesis the Warlock 76. You are Master Goosey. You are Read and Rap. You are Igloo. Right? You have a name in Meat Space, but in Twitch land, you are whatever name you want. And Spectral Valkyrie, is not the Samson you're looking for. And then there's you. The incorrigible.
rather than just look at the way things are and look at incremental changes from where we're at to a potential future, what if we just take a first principles look at, could the AI run the government? What would that look like? So,
Now, in the small part of this that I did watch, all together though, in the small part of this that I did watch, David, as per spec, is going to say some things that could trigger some of you, okay? You'll know it when you hear it. Just relax. Remember that David is David and you are you, and David cannot hurt you. You are actually Goose, like Cobra Chicken. Like you're a goose with a Twitch account. Why not? Takes all types.
Before we dive in, I just wanted to let you know this video is a little bit longer and it's broken down into 3 distinct parts. So the first part is we will talk about what is the purpose of government in general.
What up, Iron Orchid?
And that will kind of set the stage because there is quite a bit of debate over what the role of government is or should be. And it's mostly in terms of degrees. So anyways, we'll get into that in just a moment. Then in the middle part, we will talk about what would an AI government actually look like? How is that actually going to function? How would it run? And then finally, in the last part of the video, I will make some actual real predictions based on things that I know are happening today and things that are in the works. And so we'll see kind of what the actual progress should look like. So if any one of these parts doesn't resonate with you, feel free to skip ahead. But yeah, let's get right into it. So the first thing that we need to say is, okay, well, what is, objectively speaking, what is the outcome? What is the function that government provides? And right now, there are kind of 5 key pillars that government provides. And the biggest one that's missing is military. But what I will say is that the military can operate as a separate entity from government. And in fact, in many institutions, it kind of does. It's technically an extension of the executive branch, but it is also supposed to have its own thing. So that is deliberately and distinctly missing. So we're looking more at domestic government. So domestic government focuses on these 5 key principles. So first is resource management, regulating public goods and natural resources for sustainability, that sort of thing. So land use.
Okay, Reed. I remember when I prefaced all this, right? Like that that David is David and you are Reed, right? Like separate kind of things. You can't discuss everything all the time. You do have to break things down and compartmentalize things in order to discuss them. Right? Any model used in a discussion about anything is by necessity going to leave certain things out. You do your best with the model that you have and then tweak it from there. So like it is just separating out the military aspect for the purposes of this discussion. Okay? I'm imagining we could run a game theoretic simulated competition between various forms of AI government. I imagine some version of this has probably been done, and I guess we would not be comforted by the results. It's difficult to say. Like that is an assumption. There are government simulator games. Democracy is one of them. Democracy 2, Democracy 3. There might be a 4. I don't recall. Theoretically, we could get AIs to play that game and, see what it does. I know that I played it once on stream and it's very boring to play on stream. But worth looking at if you want to see it. The thing about games of government is like real government. Nothing you do will satisfy everyone. And you have to balance these factors out. And also you should read The Dictator's Handbook. Frankly, I think we serve it anyway on a silver platter. For example, judges follow AI recommendations for verdicts and bit by bit. Yeah, like I understand what you're saying. I think that there needs to be more supervision in that particular domain, because I think the quality of the AI that they're using is not what it should be.
Waterways, air, that sort of stuff. Forests, drilling rights. The second thing is economic management. So this is fiscal and monetary policy. So this has to do with central banks, regulating the stock market, that sort of stuff. Again, you're familiar with all these because we argue about it every few years here in America, based on who we want to elect. The third pillar is mediation of relationships. So this is facilitating and mediating the relationships between citizens, nations, organizations, so on and so forth. And so there's a few ways that these regulations happen, or that this mediation happens. So first is like corporate law, so ensuring that
Just wait, Boyd.
companies abide by safety regulations, that sort of thing. There's also the courts. So like if you have a dispute with someone else, there's criminal court, there's civil court. That sort of thing. There's the Supreme Court. So the court system is part of this relationship mediation. It's there to broker or referee relationships between various stakeholders in the government, namely citizens, businesses, and then other nations. So the diplomatic corps, the State Department, as we call it in America, that is part of the relationship mediation. So the government manages our relationship with, say,
I've seen Lex. Lex is wild, right? Lex is, what was it, Farscape, right? Farscape is like a significantly toned down version of Lex. So if you've seen Farscape, you might enjoy Lex if you want something a little more wild. No, not Lex Friedman. I don't remember Lex too well, other than the giant dragonfly ship and how wild things were. What up, Pruitt? Yeah, the dragonfly ship. But it's worth a watch. Like, it has its own inherent issues of things. So trigger warning, content warning. Not all of it is for all people, but there is value to be found within the storytelling of Lex. Yeah, it's out there. It exists in the world. You just got to track it down.
Britain or France or China on our behalf. The fourth thing is that they guarantee and protect and enforce rights. And so there's this is a recent term, so I've been plugging it a lot, that I learned, positive rights versus negative rights. So a positive right is something that you're entitled to, and a negative right is something that you are free from. And so, for instance, our Constitution guarantees that you are entitled to a right to free speech. You are entitled to a jury by your peers. You are entitled to certain other things.
And something about rights, and why libertarians are like inherently wrong. The only way rights exist is through a system of enforcement. You have to have a system of enforcement to either, protect or defend or codify your rights. If you don't have a system of enforcement, your rights cease to exist as soon as someone else wishes them to cease to exist. Right? Like, if the world goes all Mad Max libertarian, then you are the system of enforcement for your rights. This is why you have to have some kind of system of enforcement. Does that make sense?
Plenty of other things. But then you're also free from tyranny, free from oppression and those sorts of things. And so there's two different kinds of rights. And of course, as I mentioned earlier,
in a world of competing nation states, would this lead AI seeking to dominate and exploit poorer countries? anything is possible, right? This is the concern, which is why fundamentally having something that is seeking cooperative solutions versus competitive solutions is going to lead to better outcomes for more people, right? That's why I will have a pocket copy of the Constitution in Mad Max world so I can explain my rights accurately. There you go, baby.
It is also.
It depends. There are certain scenarios that are unpleasant, but at this point, I really don't want to go public with certain ideas. You're like, it can be difficult to discuss ideas on the internet without a charitable space in which to have conversations. There are certain topics that I specifically avoid for this reason.
Also a matter of degree, because many of your rights are relatively simple, but then there's also debate over more complex or comprehensive rights. And then finally, social organization. And so this is one of the most controversial ones, especially if you look at the news right now. The state of Texas is all up in arms about abortion rights. So again, talking about social organization, by and large, Western liberal democracies have decided not to legislate morality. And you can see this by virtue of contrast when you look at the fact that, like, there is some TikTok celebrity who got arrested, I think, in Saudi Arabia for adultery. Like, we don't do that in the West anymore. We don't say, like, oh, well, this woman, had sex with someone that she wasn't supposed to, so therefore we're going to put her in morality jail. Right? There was huge protests that broke out in Iran because a woman was beaten by the morality police. And so, by and large, Western democracies, the role of legislating morality and social structure is contracting. However, government does still play a role in this. And so what I mean by that is, what are legally recognized marriages? What are the family structures that are legally recognized? And so right now, Western liberal democracies have kind of centered around the nuclear family, or the smallest family unit, which is the marriage between a husband and a wife. Whereas in the past, there were, usually it was, tribal communities or extended families where you'd have a matriarch or a patriarch who kind of managed the whole family, and that was the legal unit. And there are still plenty of countries out there where, if not in law, then at least in practice, that is how things are run. And so the government does have a role in supporting that social organization. Then there's also other aspects of it, such as the relationship between the government and the fourth estate, which is journalism, or the church as well. So those are kind of the 5 main pillars of government. Like I said, there are plenty of other things from that list that are missing. That is on purpose, but these are kind of the 5 pillars that I want to look at for this video. So also, as I promised, a lot of this is controversial, and this goes back to even the founding of modern democracy, where Socrates himself questioned the efficiency and wisdom of democracy. So some of his critiques were, and of course this is back in the days of Athens before representative democracy. So most of what he was complaining about was tyranny of the majority. Also, I'm really toasty, so I'm going to...
And that's why you notice on the sign when you come in, it says that, that I support consensus democracy. And this was something that Arun, hit me to, is the idea that, like, without a consensus democracy, it does beat tyranny by the minority, but it also creates an environment where, let's say, an unpopular minority can really have a bad time of it, right? So consensus democracy is better than simple democracy, right? Like that kind of thing. I don't doubt AI can do government administration, but governments are underpinned by political ideology. They are. And I haven't seen the whole video, so A stable system is one that operates on consent. Agreed. And like by being able to include both the minorities and majorities in any given domain, you increase the stability of your government overall, right? This is like, you want to know why I have such an issue with what the fuck is it called? Means testing, is because there are people in the margins who those systems fail. I would prefer to give everything to everyone than means test people out of any particular program, because those gray areas not only allow people to fall through those cracks, but the falling through those cracks creates a kind of resentment, and that resentment usually gets exploited by people for political gain, right? Like the entire Reaganite concept of the welfare queen exists within that same kind of resentment space of the, well, I work hard for my money, why don't I get free thing that these imaginary people get, right? That resentment that exists there can be exploited. So I would prefer that we give everything to everyone. That way that resentment zone has no place to exist.
Switch closed. Ooh, okay, properly dressed now. But yeah, so Socrates was concerned about tyranny of the majority. And there's also what we would today call, like, you know, the kind of the difference between inclusive democracy, where everyone gets a say, versus expertise. And this is one of the chief tensions, particularly in America, but also in other nations, because communism, like capital C communism, said, oh, well, the citizens...
Brace yourself, leftists in chat.
Citizens shouldn't have a vote because they're all dumb. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to hand the reins to the quote unquote experts. And then the experts, without any checks and balances, are going to get to make decisions. And in Soviet Russia, that led to mass famines because the so-called experts mismanaged farms, mismanaged the economy, and that sort of thing. And that, by the way, still goes on today. There are, I was watching a documentary about how there are places in China that you still can't grow food because of decades of communist mismanagement. On the other hand, your average citizen is also not necessarily qualified to make decisions. So you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Now, what I wanted to include this slide for was to say that there are flaws with democracy. I would say that there are more egregious flaws, particularly with every way that communism has been implemented. And so I am not a communist. I am not a socialist, even though some of you accuse me of that. I also have people say that I'm a neoconservative. So make up your minds. I consider myself a pragmatic progressive. But anyways, that's a conversation for another topic.
And this is true. Like, again, because I have pointed out how a lot of ideas that he has would fall under the socialist banner in practice, that, like, it's just one step. But also we have that idea of ists and isms, right? When you have ists and you have isms, then this is a blanket term that contains a lot of stuff which might not be effective, that you might not endorse anything else. So let's focus on the policies, and you can call it whatever you want to call it. You can call it Happy Fun Time Sunday Vanilla Ice Cream. I don't care. What I care about is what it does. What does it do? What does it look like in practice? How does it work? How does it help all the people? This kind of thing.
So let's move on, but I just wanted to address the elephant in the room and say that yes, democracy does have some fundamental flaws, going back to the founding of the thing. The other component of that makes government hard is just intrinsic human flaws. And so one example is charismatic leaders. So charismatic manipulators are able to...
Like I knew it, that's why there was like 3 caveats before we even got to this part of like
to use demagoguery and other things to kind of get in and wreck things. Power-seeking behavior, profit motivation, plain old ignorance. And so basically this all...
A thing I would like to point out is that freedom and democracy, and that was a slogan during the Cold War, has no deep roots in capitalism. There's no great tradition for these things to go well together. 100%, right? Like, by definition, democracy is an infringement on certain rights, and freedom would be the opposite of that, right? One of the issues that comes up with people when they are talking about their political ideology is that they use these blanket terms like freedom and democracy, and it's like, okay, well, what does it mean? What does it mean in practice? How does your freedom connect with your responsibility? Right? Like, you can have maximum freedom by disconnecting yourself from all of the structures that exist within a modern society. And this is why I wanted to talk about like the freedom responsibility slider that I mentioned when I talked to Ivan Neo. But that's a whole thing in and of itself. But the short version of it is like, if you disconnect yourself from all these things, then you can have maximum freedom. But then you also have maximum responsibility, This is what that comes down to. You are responsible for everything if you wish to truly be free, and you will probably die, right? It takes a very special person who is capable of being like absolute freedom. Like Ted Kaczynski living in the woods with his goat and his dog was significantly higher on the freedom axis than a lot of people who claim freedom while driving a truck and living in a suburban house and things like that. Ted Kaczynski is not an ideal that we should aspire to, in my opinion, and hopefully yours.
Speaks to the reason that government is structured as the way that it is, because the framers of modern Western liberal democracies basically said, okay, well, they didn't have the word for it, but they noticed that, a non-trivial chunk of the population is just crazy. Whether they're narcissistic, whether they are sociopaths, whether they are just completely saturated with greed. So they said, okay, well, we have to know that some people are going to be power seeking. We have to know that some people are going to be manipulative and so on and so forth. And so that's part of the reason that the government is structured the way that it is, so that you have checks and balances.
Welcome, Ms. Warp. BS, it's all BS. Do you want to extrapolate on that? That's a little difficult. Like all of it? Like everything? Like everything? Like macaroni and cheese and cats and, Toy Story 2? It's all BS? The idea of an equitable society is exported from North American indigenous culture to Europe, reworded, sent back to America before the revolution. The Covered in the Dawn of Everything, highly recommended people read this book. It's nice, like it takes all those ideas and puts them in a single place. That's one way to look at it, I suppose. Yeah, just like all of it BS. Well, then, I mean, what are you doing?
So that you have these relief mechanisms that allow you to, change up leadership on a regular basis, which in theory should prevent any particular group or person from accumulating and holding on to too much power. So far, so good, but there are some people who...
I'm with you, Nemesis. Like a lot of the things that I see, people are at least saying the right words, right? We'll see if those right words translate into right action, but they are saying the right words. That's what provides me with hope.
Very deliberately and explicitly want to upset that balance, because what happens is when you allow for the leadership at all levels to change up on a regular basis, and you have this kind of as a mechanistic system, you prevent that accumulation of power, but also it becomes easier to spot people who are accumulating power. Now, of course, here in America, we have a problem of gerontocracy, where we have people literally serving until their 80s and 90s, and in recent cases dying in office, even though they are not legally competent to take care of themselves. So if someone is not legally competent to take care of themselves, they are certainly not legally competent to run the nation. But of course, the American system was framed before people were living long enough to have dementia. So we got some work to do. So that leads us to representative democracy. So basically, the way that it generally runs.
Are you like not someone who is a fan of AI as Warp? Or are you just generally a contrarian? Or are you having a moment? No judgment. I just would like to understand where you're coming from, because you have a lot of things to say. Yeah, I don't feel like... Do you have any... Sorry, what was that? How do you feel about artificial intelligence? You brought a lot of negativity into the space, and I'm just trying to figure out where that's coming from. It is the future, okay. What is it about David Shapiro's presentation that you don't like? Yeah, he uses DALL-E and LLMs. Is there something you want to talk about? Obviously, from your point of view, you feel that it's critical thinking as opposed to negativity. But if you look at it from my point of view, it does look like negativity, and that's why I'm asking. Like you came in really, really hot. BS, it's all BS, blurg, you know? So, like, I just trying to gauge where you're at. Well, you're welcome to now allow any political views, which is also political, by the way. See, this is the thing, is like I'm just asking you where you're at, and you seem to be like, yeah, what I thought. I allow political views. BS, it's all BS is not I mean, everything is political in the broadest sense, but BS, it's all BS is not it's not constructive. Doesn't bring anything to the table. Just reading a lot of papers and not liking my own Christmas outlook. I feel that, like, and that's why I'm trying to be sympathetic, because this is a tough time of the year for people, generally speaking. It's a tough time in history for a lot of people, generally speaking. And I'm not, like, there are streamers who would have gone out of their way to really give you a hard time and kick your ass and do shit like that. That's not what I do. AI will only be useful if it helps humanity. Otherwise, F it. I agree, 100%. You might want to just relax within, and you don't have to type everything in chat that you're feeling. And maybe we'll get to something. I haven't watched this video. I'm watching it for the first time with y'all. And maybe there's some hope to be found within this video. Your roll papers. Pouring another white rum. Okay. You just go easy, right? Not too much. Everything in moderation. All right.
Today is that we have a division of power. We have a 3-branch system. So that's legislative, judicial, and executive branch. The judicial branch is obviously like one of the weaker ones, except for the Supreme Court, which does kind of set a lot of the tone. We use elected officials. So the elected officials then, represent our willpower, and they appoint experts. And then sometimes we do vote on experts, sometimes we don't. Some officials.
Hi, Maddie. So, for everyone who just came in, remember that David is David, and there are going to be some disagreements with the way that David views things versus what we view things. And to just let it flow over you, okay?
Some offices are appointed by the electorate, some aren't. But this is all part of the ongoing negotiation. And part of the reason that it's so messy is because we're constantly making little adjustments to the whole structure, which is good because, you look at revolutions of the past, and one of the key reasons why civil wars have happened in the past is because, and not even in the distant past, in the recent past, is because the government is too rigid or too inflexible and does not respond to the will of the people and the changing times. And so the key thing is peaceful transitions. It's not
Correct.
just a matter of representing the will of the people.
Well, hold up.
Because if you...
Disclaimer, this is David Shapiro. Globus does not explicitly endorse all of his views. You're going to make a disclaimer like that, especially as my mod. You need to make sure that you read everything that you type after disclaimer, right? I don't explicitly endorse David's views. There's a chunk of them that I would generally disagree with. If David is not everyone, and this is a thing, that I need all the leftists and all, I don't know that there's any right-wingers in the audience, but whatever your political views are, the entire... I'm not saying that they're a problem group, right? I'm saying that they have very strong views, and that there are, and I don't care who you are. I don't care what you would describe your political affiliation as, right? Your political views, you have a party of one, right? You have a party of one that believes what you believe. Everyone else is going to believe something at least slightly different. And the farther away they get from you, the more different that they might view, you know. So if you want to have conversations, if you want to convince people, if you want to create a coalition, you are going to have to accept that not everyone believes the things that you believe to the extent that you believe them. So what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? And then how are you going to accomplish those goals? Right? This is why I specifically talk about.
Is like any other shiny new toy, AI is ultimately a mirror, and it will reflect back exactly who we are.
Right? Thank you, Digital, for your continuing support. The idea that like you're gonna have to talk to people, and you're going to have to accept that they're not going to agree with you on stuff, and this is why I care about policies and not ists and isms. Right? Don't tell me that you're a leftist. Don't tell me that you're a libertarian. Don't tell me any of this crap. What policies do you endorse? What policies are you trying to get accomplished? And you are going to rank those in some fashion within yourself. What is the most important? What is the one thing that you would take over everything else? Right? What are your top 10 things? What is your ride or die kind of, policy? What is your I am not going to give up on this policy no matter what, and it needs to hit this kind of benchmark, and if it doesn't hit this benchmark, then it's not worth doing, that kind of thing. These will inform what kind of people you can associate with to accomplish those goals. Disclaimer, the content provided on the stream covers a variety of views and perspectives, including those of content creators. It is important to note that the inclusion of any content creator's views or opinions does not constitute an explicit endorsement of their beliefs, values, or actions. The information presented here is intended for educational and critical thinking exercise purposes only. Users are encouraged to approach the content with a discerning and open-minded perspective, engaging in thoughtful analysis and consideration. The diverse range of viewpoints presented is meant to foster intellectual exploration and stimulate constructive conversation. While efforts are made to provide accurate and up-to-date information, content creators' views are subject to change and new developments may arise. Users are advised to verify information independently and seek professional advice when necessary. This stream does indeed attempt to assume responsibility for the accuracy, completeness, or reliability of the information presented by content creators, but users are also expected to be responsible for exercising their own judgment and discretion while engaging with the content provided. Also, listen to Playboy Cardi. Also, listen to Globus AI sing Playboy Cardi. Now that was solid. That was solid. That was solid. Somebody should clip that because that was first rate.
You wanted to create a government that was purely of the people for.
What up, Whistle? I do sing, but there's an AI that Old Lobster made to dub my voice over other people's voices, and like that. I do sing a bit. My favorite song to sing is "Creep" by Radiohead, because I pull a surprising falsetto out of my voice, and it surprises people, and I enjoy that, and I really like the song. So one day.
For the people, by the people, it would look different from representative democracy. But really, what the framers, particularly of the American system, wanted to achieve was peaceful transition of power.
Global's going to have a channel points redeemed for songs. Like, what do you want to see? Like, one, if you want me to sing directly, that's something. But like, if you want it through the AI, then you put it in the playlist and pray to our Lord and Savior Old Lobster to provide us with that content.
Power. Because when you had monarchy, you'd have wars of succession. When you had basically most of Europe being run by a single royal family and all their cousins and second cousins and fifth cousins.
Yeah, if anything gets modded like that, that's the auto mod is wild. I guess I could turn it off because of the other security systems in place. I just haven't done that yet.
You could still end up with major problems. See World War I and World War II. Obviously, America was founded before that, but there was, you listen to history, like Europe was just one constant set of wars for like 500 years. And then, as I already mentioned, incremental changes. Part of the goal of government is to allow for incremental changes that is not necessarily steered exclusively by a controlling elite, but that the will of the people can make incremental changes to the government itself, even the founding document, such as, in our case, a constitutional democracy. And so the idea is that this is a gigantic system that is meant to allow change, but also resist change, because you don't want the pendulum to swing too wildly. You don't want to oscillate by correcting and then overcorrecting. And so these are all the things that go into the purpose of government. Why is it here? Why does it work the way that it does? So this stands in stark contrast to single-party systems, such as what we see in China.
You're popping off again, and I don't know what you're trying to accomplish. If you want to critique David's content, I recommend that you go on to David's YouTube channel and comment under his videos, because as much as I meme about David watching the show, I really doubt that he does, so he's probably not going to see your comments.
And Russia, which they are technically democracies because they run quote-unquote elections, but most of the elections are fixed, and I think that it's not a controversial thing to say that they are not actually true democracies, or they are what I would call kind of a pseudo-democracy, where it's got some of the dressings, some of the trappings. But when you consider that both Putin and Xi Jinping were able to manipulate the system so that they were lifelong appointees, they basically made themselves kings. So some of the characteristics that you see in single party systems are you get a monolithic structure. That's by definition, the CCP is China. China is the CCP. There isn't really any alternative. While there are technically other, people that run against Putin, they usually fall out of windows or end up getting poisoned. So that's not necessarily a viable strategy there. Part of the way that these regimes maintain control is they become more authoritarian over time. And so that leads to things like information control. Both Russia and China have state-run.
Now, I will critique this video, even though we've only gotten 15 minutes into it. And it may be unfair. Like there could be a reason for all this later on in the video, but I feel like a lot of this is not necessarily something that needed to be gotten into in a video about AI running a government, right? Like, all of this just seems a little excessive. And it contains within it the trap of like has already happened. People who disagree with his perception of, certain elements are going to be less interested in listening to the later portions that they might in fact be interested in and or agree with. So like it's something that you have to take into consideration. But David does David stuff and Globus does Globus stuff.
Media. So basically, if you see a lack of state-run media, that is usually a sign of a healthier democracy, which we'll talk about in just a second. They do allow liberalization. So
yeah, they're right, Brett.
This is one of the things that kind of gave us hope after the collapse of the Soviet Union and after China's great leap forward, was that they eventually did allow for some liberalization of the economy because they wanted the profits, but they didn't liberalize in terms of civil liberties, in terms of voting rights and government reforms. And there are also pretty interesting cultural and historical roots that kind of explain why this happens. Now, you could look at places like Japan and Germany, which did, granted, because guns were pointed at them after World War II, they were able to liberalize very effectively. Now, Japan still has the imperial family, but they're mostly just token, right? You know, the Japanese parliament runs the country. Germany did away with everything, and now they are, fully liberalized democracy. And so the argument that that single party systems inevitably emerge in some of these nations for historical and cultural reasons doesn't necessarily stand up to scrutiny, particularly when you look at the history of Japan. But they also had to lose a major war in order to have that new democracy forced on them. And of course, that set the tone for the rest of the 20th century and 21st century, where the Western allies basically enforce and export democracy onto other nations, whether or not they want it, which of course that's what Putin and Xi Jinping are pushing back against now. Actually, more explicitly, it's very interesting where they just basically have flatly said, like, we don't want your Western values. Now, do they reflect the will of the people? Doesn't sound like it. I've interviewed some people from other places, not Russia or China, but I interviewed some people from Syria, and the idea is that the more that they learn about Western democracy, the more that they want it, which is the reason that people like Putin and Xi Jinping need to resist information and need to poison their people against the idea of voting and power. But that's why there is still ongoing conflict in Syria, is because people know they've seen greener pastures and they want it, and they're going to keep fighting for it. The fighting has tamped down, but Syria is deeply fragmented.
It is always important to remember that the people that you talk to are subject to their own conditions, right? Like, the people who are of Cuban descent within the United States are going to, categorically, there's a high probability that people of Cuban descent in the United States left Cuba after the revolution, which is going to, color their opinions about Cuba after the revolution, right? Not making a judgment call there. I'm saying that that's how that is always going to work. Whoever left, whoever had their stuff taken by the new power structure is going to be upset at the new power structure. That's always going to be the case.
Fragmented right now. So anyways, that is by virtue of contrast, looking at a single party system.
And that's the point I wanted to get at, Maddie. It is like the non-random sampling bias is not something that you can use in order to make a declarative statement about that kind of situation. Are there groups within Syria that are pro-Western democracy, Western values, whatever the fuck those things mean? I would say yes, right? Yes. Are they indicative of a sufficient amount of the population that wants that? That would require much more data gathering that doesn't happen, right? Like that, we don't have that data to make that conclusion. There are always people who like the monarch, right? And they don't have to be like people who actually benefit under the monarch. There are people who think they benefit under the monarch, and there are people who do benefit under the monarch. Like if you have a strong king and he protects your country from its enemies and allows you to get up in the morning and go do your job, whatever that job is, and come home, and your kids get to grow up in education, then you might not value a democratic process. Right? Especially if monarchy is all you've ever known. I've got Pi on my phone. I'm hoping to get to mess around with it tomorrow. People often confuse things with other things, Adam. You know, it's like, if you exist in a time of peace, then you will naturally ascribe that time of peace to your government for providing you with that time of peace. You know, what up, non-binary? You know what I mean? There's like, people make a lot of presuppositions and assumptions. That's what we do. That's what I try to avoid doing, right? Like,
system or fail.
Whoa. I would never say something like that. I try to avoid using certain words like that. You absolutely hit me with your funny story. Also, don't forget being unemployed for, let's say, Saudi Arabia, as they handle unwanted journalists. You will be able to afford a car, a house, and everything you desire. And if you work, you won't pay taxes. Still, you will never hold power if you aren't in one of the families. Right. Like, a lot of the stuff is like, what are your goals? You know, what do you want? A lot of people are just happy to be able to go about their daily lives without worrying about starving or being killed or any of that kind of thing. Like, this is why I take time to think about where people are coming from and why they believe what they believe, as opposed to, like, I don't like brain rot. I don't like that kind of, I don't think it brings anything to the table. And this is an evolved position over time, right? Like, and I'm not telling you not to enjoy your brain rot or whatever. I don't think it's helpful. I want to view the Trump supporter wearing a flag jacket and a hat as a human being and understand why they came about these ideas and why they think what they think. And they want a king, right? Like, they want one strong man who will eliminate doubt and keep the peace for their particular, their particular group. This is part of empathy, is understanding why people feel the way that they feel there, and then trying to help them. You know what I mean? Yeah, poor Nazim. I seem to be in the chats when you tell your stories ahead of time.
Failed democracies, which there are some people that explicitly want to turn America into a single party system, and to all of you, I say stop. And then finally, there is the nightmarish central management or totalitarian regimes. This is what you see in terms of fascism or old school communism, where there wasn't any elections whatsoever, farcical or otherwise. North Korea is the current kind of prime example of the quote unquote hermit kingdom, where it is top down authoritarian control, and they regulate everything. Apparently, in North Korea, they even regulate how much grieving you're supposed to do for the former dead leaders. So that's not just legislating morality; they're controlling emotions. And apparently, people have been sent to like re-education camps for not grieving enough in public on their days of remembrance or whatever. These kinds of things, they're necessarily surveillance states. Extreme conformity is required, and then any breach of conformity is deeply and severely punished. Democracy is noisy. This is one of the things that I think a lot of people don't understand, which is why I'm going through all this, is because all the vitriol, all the vicious debates about, Trump versus Biden, or, left versus right, or, whoever. Democracy is noisy by design. When you look at a nation that, say, oh, we're perfectly aligned because they quash debate. You're not allowed to criticize Putin. You're not allowed to criticize Xi Jinping. You're not allowed to criticize the Kim Jong-un. So because of that, those nations, they appear more orderly. They appear quieter. They appear to be more in lockstep. However, in America and India and Britain and all these other places where you have really vicious debates, you have mudslinging, you have muckraking, you have all kinds of things, and that is by design. And so when you understand that the ability to speak up, that if you really don't like something in the West, you can start a YouTube channel or a TikTok channel and say, the president's an idiot, and I have zero fear of that. Whereas could you do that in China, in Russia, in North Korea? No. And of course, those are just some of the most extreme examples. There are plenty of other oppressive regimes around the world. And so because of that, because debating is encouraged, because dissent is tolerated, because we can air our grievances, this allows for a level of transparency. But the flip side,
your mileage may vary, right? Dissent is the truest form of patriotism. I'll give you that, Ponder Monkey. But yeah, your mileage may vary. And this is you. People's understanding of geopolitics are generally suspect on the internet. And this is partly due to confirmation bias. It's partly due to not interacting with sources that don't, that on a grander scale, right? The whole idea, well, I'm not going to watch CNN because it's lib shit, or I'm not going to watch Fox News because it's auth-right shit, or, these kind of things. And I understand that. You should remember that whatever you intake is going to flavor what you believe, right? And if all you see is good things about X country, then you will believe that X country is always good, right? That whatever they're doing. Could you elaborate on what the golden cage is? In general, there is a trend in, shall we say, Western countries towards intolerance. There's a whole lot of things that are happening. India has its own set of problems, right? Modi has got some real strong authoritarian streaks in him, and the way that their elections have gone are not what we would consider in the United States. We talk about voter suppression. There have been incidents over there that ramp that shit up. And I only know this because I watch Arun, right? I seek out the people who are talking about the information and that to get that that kind of information. I'm not an authority on these things. So I do not generally speak on them because I don't want to give you the wrong impression. If I am going to say something, then I'm going to show you the information that allowed me to come to these conclusions, so that you too can look at that same information and come to your own conclusion.
side of that is that people don't get along all the time. The fact of the matter is that, you know, you can say things that people disagree with, and then you can get into internet debates, or, you know, choose your favorite talking head, which now I have joined the League of Talking Heads, so yeah, whatever. But these are all features. This is a feature, not a bug. That is the key thing, is that if democracy is noisy, that is a sign of a healthy democracy. Now, you can also end up in situations where people kind of naturally agree. And so this is you know, there was, what was it called? The era of good feelings, where America basically became by default kind of a single party system for about 20 years. But that was just because things were going well and there was nothing really to argue about. And of course, that is a gross oversimplification. But that emerged naturally, not by force. Whereas during contentious times, whether there are external threats, internal threats, or social upheaval, you should expect it to get a little bit nastier. But again, that is part of democracy working itself out by having those ongoing debates and having those ongoing dissenting opinions and airing those grievances and talking it out. That is part of the process. That is a sign of things progressing as intended. So, with all that being said, what would an AI government look like?
Thank God.
Because the thing is, when you're looking at all this, it's not a matter of machines just making decisions and enforcing it on us. That's a totalitarian regime, which we don't want. What we really want is, we want the messiness of democracy that we have today. Because, you know, whenever I talk about universal AI values, it's like, well, who gets to decide them? And the answer is, and this is kind of why I was always confused by that retort, but I understand it better, is because we the people get to decide what values we ultimately want to live by. Now, there's always a contingent of people who want to enforce their particular values on everyone because they don't understand the history of democracy or why things are the way they are. Like, for instance, whenever someone says America is a Christian nation and we all need to have more Christian law, that is indistinguishable from Muslims who want to impose Sharia law on everyone else. So stop doing that. The idea is freedom and equality are the highest principles that we have agreed on. And so then it's a matter of creating a container that allows for different approaches to life. Now, some people do not tolerate differences. They don't tolerate differences of religion or of opinion or values or beliefs. And those people are just wrong. That's not how democracy works. That's not how inclusive, tolerant societies work. So this thought experiment then is, okay, let's just assume that AI has the capacity to run the government. Let's just imagine a year from now when we have AGI and it's performing above human level on all benchmarks. It's in the 99.9th percentile or higher for like literally every cognitive ability. We've got, you know, advanced robots that can do stuff. And the ultimate goal is, what if we just removed humans from the government wholesale? Like, let's go full Monty, because this is what my Patreon supporter was like, no, let's not beat around the bush. Let's just go full Monty and see what would this require? What are the challenges and how would it actually work? So let's dive into some of the components that would make this happen. So the first thing that we need to do is use AI, whether it's a combination of existing, you know, machines and databases and stuff, combined with large language models, combined with deep multimodal models. We need to survey the will of the people. Whatever else is true, one of the chief purposes of government is to reflect the will of the people. Now, right now, the primary way we have to do that is through voting. That is the primary mechanism that we have to express our will, where it's, you know, every so often we get to go pick a person who we feel represents our desires and beliefs, and then we go and hire them via election to go represent our desires, our values, our beliefs in the process of government. But if you remove all humans, then it's not necessarily electing a representative. You have to express your will.
Just be careful what you express, you know, in chat on the internet, and not for like a Rocco's Basilisk kind of reason, but like people take things in different ways, and like stuff can get you in trouble. There's a reason why people tend to follow up statements with in Minecraft or in GTA or like that.
Will some other way. Now, that doesn't mean that you get rid of voting. Maybe you have more voting. But this goes back to Socrates' complaint, which, and I know Elon Musk is one of the people who said, oh, direct democracy makes sense. It absolutely doesn't. You do not want to live in a direct democracy, because then you have tyranny of the majority, and that can get real bad real fast. However, by combining existing online platforms, leveraging new technologies, using large language models and semantic clustering.
What up, old lobster?
And all sorts of stuff. I suspect that we could easily build a platform, a democratic platform, that very, very comprehensively collects and understands the will of the people. And then what do you do with that information? We can figure that out later. But
I figured you're like, even when you're not talking, you're always kind of like around, you know what I mean?
Rather than just picking a person, because also remember, go back to the slide that I did about fundamental human flaws, power seeking, avarice, plain old ignorance. You get rid of those if you get rid of people. Now you introduce new problems if you replace people with machines. But the point is that if we can directly express our willpower through some mechanism, maybe with a combination of blockchain voting and artificial intelligence and a few other things, then the machine apparatus of government will at least be aware of what we, the people, want. So that's step one. We need something that allows us to express our will and allows it to be recorded.
What up, Aiden Dragonbane? Welcome in. I feel like this could be very exploited even more than humans. Always a possibility. You're not wrong. There is, like, even today with democracy, there's a certain amount of trust when you like cast a vote, that the numbers that they give you are indicative of people who actually voted, right? There's trust in these systems, there's trust, and that your trust in that system is going to be on a scale, and it will be flavored by whether or not the outcome was the one that you desired and everything else. So there is that issue of that kind of black box where even if we had like a direct democracy where I was able to use a device in order to directly vote on any particular issue, and that kind of stuff, that the artificial intelligence on the other end would count the vote and that it would matter in some way. You know what I mean? I think in the context of who decides what is ethical, we still do, assuming it's trained on all available data. It's good that it's a black box. I would be more worried if it wasn't. Yeah, it's like, and this is the whole thing that I have with like, is open source better, is closed source better? Is like, I'll tell you in 50 years, right? Like right now, I don't know. Some people just, what up, Rudix World? Welcome. Some people just like to watch the world burn. True. I do not, right? Like, I'm not looking forward to any kind of like revolutionary kind of thing that results in a major disruption to the systems that we currently have in place. One, because I consider that a general step back. But two is I actually care about the people who would be negatively affected by the disruption of those systems. I want them to survive, and they need them to they need those systems to survive. They need that medication, right? They need that insulin. If there was a revolution in the United States, it would disrupt people's ability to get vital medications, and then they would die. And I'm not a fan of that. Then I think it should just be an AI assisting a human, but in combination. That is another option. Like this, what David is presenting here should not be taken as the end-all, be-all of how it should operate. It is like we should be thinking about these things. We should be talking about these things. We should be having discussions and trying to decide, like, what is it that we actually want? Like, do we want an AI king because the AI king would be so much smarter and more informed and be able to extrapolate things better than the messy humans? Do we want a direct democracy where we have control over what the AI does and it can't make autonomous decisions without our input, and it aggregates all the votes from all the people to decide what the outcome is? Is there a consensus modifier where we have to hit some kind of thing? We are not there yet. We just need to start talking about these kind of things now. Open source because humans are humans, but these are machines. I can still see it both ways. As a tool, not a crutch. Let's say I have increasing doubt in government systems as such, and that's fair. Like, we live in very trying times. Revolution in the U.S., give me a break. We're just out of taking about mittens. Yeah, you're really on one today, homie. Now we should be able to shut it down, but an expert system would be a try. It has to be trained, tested, verified, corrected. This is how we get Mentats. 49% AI, 51% human board of directors. That's another option, right? Like, just what I want each of you to do in your own time. It doesn't necessarily have to be in chat. We could talk about it in Discord, or you could just do it in your own time. But this goes all the way back to the beginning of the episode where we're talking about the zombie apocalypse and world building. Is like, really think about what these things mean. Like, whether you want to do it on computer, whether you want to do it with ChatGPT, whether you do pen and paper, whatever you want to do. You want to plan out a government, then plan out the goddamn government. Think about how it does all the things that it will need to do, and don't skip over any areas and just say, oh, it'll get taken care of. Think about it. This is important. Till it reaches AGI and superintelligence, and I see no reason to control it, and frankly, we shouldn't even try. And that is the AI king potentiality. AI is taken over already. Its minions are in nightclubs thinking they are kings of the world. Okay.
And accurately measured, so that then the AI government can then use that. Another component of this is ongoing negotiation. So like I said, democracy is noisy by design. But if you get rid of individual, politicians, then you don't have conventions, you don't have town halls. So then who are you talking to? Who do you write letters to? And this is, again, where the collecting the will of the people is not just about, okay, the people have expressed their desire on this particular issue, now the machine goes and does it. It is an ongoing conversation. It is an ongoing negotiation and renegotiation as the situation changes, as our understanding changes, as consensus changes, and so on and so forth. And so part of the government, what it does today is, the White House has their press corps, and politicians have their public relations managers. So we basically need the same thing, but with various AI components, kind of saying this is what we're doing and this is why, and like here's a chance for feedback. We need to disseminate ideas, resources, and that sort of stuff. Oh, and one thing that I should point out is that I'm not necessarily thinking that one monolithic AI is the right way to go, because from a narrative perspective, that's easier to say, like, the AI. But really, I think that if we were to replace government with AI, it should be probably millions of individual AI agents all working together that are individually transparent.
Here's another thing, right? Like, so here's a future in which you have your device, right? You got your device, and your device has on it your personal AI, right? Like it learns from you, learns what you like, what you don't like. It could learn what your political views are, how you feel about any particular subject, right? Because of the amount of time that you interact with it, what you do with it, all that kind of stuff. But it's not you, but it knows you as well, if not better than you know yourself. Would you accept, as part of like a world government, or because it would necessarily facilitate a world government and things like that, but would you accept a representative democracy where you're represented by your AI? Because you don't necessarily want to vote on every little thing, because you have other stuff you want to actually do. But your representative AI could vote on your behalf as part of like a council of AIs to determine how any particular thing is done. Not saying that that should or should not be done. I'm just saying that, is that how would you feel about that? You know what I mean? Thinking the same thing, but then I thought we would actually feed it data or just search what we were entertained by. Like, it could be all things. It really could be all things. That's fun. Two of you got flagged for the same word. Again, I'm memeing, but like, the emergent AI is taking over portions of the internet, old lobster. Like, things on the internet are rather wacky lately. Could be something completely unrelated to artificial intelligence.
Hence the swarms that we've been working on. Anyways, so getting back to the slide, there needs to be constant feedback between, the people and the AI government, and as well as, I mentioned consensus, but it's basically debate, discussion, negotiation, dialogue, consensus. Those are all kind of the same thing, but the key takeaway is that it needs to be a two-way conversation. It's not just a unilateral, the will of the people gets expressed and then the AI government goes and does that. That's not exactly the way that it works, and that's by design. That's not how representative democracy works. It's we express our will, and then the professional politicians, ideally, go and do their best to accommodate that. But of course, our politician goes to battle with other politicians and so on and so forth. Likewise,
I don't know, Lobster. Like all of like, I honestly don't track all the servers I'm part of, but all the ones I've seen are still there when I just looked. So I've never seen an AI with an opinion. It doesn't even protect your interests as prompter, what they call unbiased. Yeah. Like, yeah, kind of we get into the definition of what is a word, or what, like, definitions of words. Like, what is an opinion, right? Like, is an opinion something that you state based on facts? Is it something that you state based on feelings? Is it something you state on a combination of the two? That kind of stuff. So depending on how you define opinion, like, people felt that Grok was woke because it, said that a trans woman is a woman. And then a certain subset of people lost their goddamn mind.
we the people express our will to an AI government, and it will do the best that it can to implement that willpower within the constraints, within the boundaries of the way that other people, want things to go, as well as other higher universal principles, such as enshrining, equality and freedom above.
In terms of decision making, for that you need opinion. Do you? That's how I tend to roll, Old Lobster, but like data doesn't allow for some values that are outside of data. And this is the whole thing is, what do you value and what are your goals? And your values, like where someone else's values might not be my values, for me to design a system that automatically negates their values is authoritarianism. And that is not something that I'm a fan of, right? Like, and that is a value that I have. So like some of my values run into other values within these things.
Of all else, above, as an example, above a religious theocracy. Another thing that it's going to need is mechanisms for change. So as Western liberal democracies work today, incrementalism is the name of the game. You can make changes to literally every aspect of the government piece by piece, starting with the Constitution, and there are mechanisms there that allow for that change, which is why I gave this like little transformer dude, because it's like it looks like a modular robot or whatever. So it's supposed to be an allegory. But when you have an AI government, you don't want it to be rigid. You don't want it to be like, okay, once you implement it once, it's that way forever. No, you literally want every piece of the stack to be changeable, to be plastic. And so that means all the models that the agents use, the hardware, the software, and that's just the system itself. Then all the policies that the system uses, the technology stack that it uses, the principles that it abides by. So, if you've watched my channel, you know that I'm a big fan of like Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I'm also a big fan of the heuristic imperatives that I created, but those need to be part of what is negotiated. That needs to be part of what is changeable. Now, obviously, the core values, the core principles, you need to be really, darn sure that you want to change those. And it's also not necessarily something that you want direct democracy on, because one, you might never get it passed, but you do want everyone to have a say in the process. So that's one thing that I think some people are not familiar with when looking at government systems. It's not necessarily a vote on the outcome. It's participating in the process of decision making. But all that aside, this AI government system will need ways of changing, of modifying, of changing the stack, of changing everything about it. So there's a couple parts of this, because while you want it to be able to change, you don't want it to change too quickly. I guess long story short is, this is probably one of the hardest parts, is kind of what I'm getting at, is creating a system that is modifiable, but that is not overly modifiable and that will adapt at the correct pace. And who knows, maybe that's the kind of policy that AI would be optimized to discover. That would be an interesting conversation to have. Another thing is that the scope of this AI government needs to expand and contract. And so what I mean by that is, when America was founded, it was a very small government, and it has gotten progressively bigger and bigger and bigger over time. One of the kind of turns of phrase that was used about a century ago was that the presidency was like a glove that stretched around the hand that wore it, and it would never contract afterwards. And so, you've probably heard debates about executive overreach or presidential overreach. Pretty much every president has expanded the office of presidency, and it has never really contracted. Likewise, the US government and many other governments have generally gotten bigger over time, and we're all very happy when it's like, oh, Obama shut down a dozen agencies or merged a few other ones, and it's like, yay, the government got smaller, technically. But the role of government has generally expanded, with the one exception being legislating morality, which is one of the places where Western governments have generally ceded that territory back to the people entirely. But part of an idealized,
Again, your mileage may vary.
AI government is that if the people decide this is not the role of government and vote it out, the robots will say, okay, we cede this territory. This is now up to you. It's up to you to manage this. So like, here's another example, was embedded liberalism. The transition from there to neoliberalism was basically the free market, right? Everyone's familiar with the principles, the kind of our love affair with the free market. So that's a second example of the government kind of ceding territory, and rather than providing a lot of services directly, it says, well, we'll let the free market provide those services and needs. Now, if we make a similar decision in the future, let's say, for instance, we want the government to take its paws off of roads, just as an example. Say, actually, we'll manage that from now on. Who knows? Maybe there will be technological solutions in the future that allow we, the people, to manage our own roads without any oversight from the government. I doubt it. But just as an example, we do need mechanisms for an AI government to both expand and contract as it makes sense. And not just on its own accord, but also as a reflection of the will of the people, and not just blindly following the will of the people, but making good decisions about what ground to cede versus what not to cede.
And like, there's a contradiction contained. This is like a broad kind of conversation. Like, this is not declarative statements. Remember that. This is an idea, a conversation starter, really. Like the inherent contradiction in there is like, does the AI allow the will of the people to act in a way that is not beneficial to the people? Right? Like, should humans be allowed to make bad decisions? And if not, then where do you draw that line? Do you get bad decisions as a treat? Do you get performative bad decisions? We could Ponder Monkey, the idea of like mistakes. First of all, like, once we get to a certain level of, AGI, the AI will do all the advancement, right? And it would be able to make mistakes in a simulation rather than in like the reality. You know what I mean? So like we realize some time ago, I understand, but we realize now that the particular path that we chose with the use of fossil fuels leads to what is likely, a permanent level of climate change, unless we are able to institute something that can turn that around, right? Like, if we don't do anything, there's a permanent level of climate change, and it could continue, it could increase. So that is a simulation that it could have ran, theoretically. That would be like have aspects of it in the no column, right? There might be other aspects that are in the yes column, but like that aspect of it, that planet becoming less hospitable to human life, generally a big no. But human beings might choose to, like in the one reality that we are aware of, human beings did choose that path. And we chose to run that simulation in real time and in real space, and we ended up with this outcome, and we're stuck with those consequences. Is that something that we should be allowed to do? Humans should be allowed to make bad input. It's the job of the AI to sort what is a good decision to get where the humans want to. And that's another thing, is like, what if your goals and your requests are not in alignment? And that's why I talked about like performative mistakes, right? You know what I mean? Let's say every politician has this assistant. The human makes a decision. If it's bad and the AI advice opposite, it could be used in court, for an example. Yes, that is another option. But then that's an after the fact, right? Like, again, we are on a particular trajectory of climate change where we could hold all those people accountable, and none of that would change the current situation. So yeah, we could use that AI assistant in court, but we're already fucked, right? Like that kind of thing. And then the AI should devise a plan to align things or tell people that this is not feasible. Would you accept the AI lying to people? Because it could be in fact feasible, but produces a poor outcome. And humans tend to be like pig-headed, right? Where we think we know best. Like, how many times a day do you hear someone say something that sounds like well, I know best? Our best chance as underlings is pestering our AI overlords with 1,000 sharp intellectual spears, however tiny. We will debate the AI in the marketplace of ideas. It's just, and it's like, I don't necessarily even want anyone to come up with any conclusions today. I want you to think thoughts. I want you to have ideas. I want you to share ideas. I want you to work through all this stuff, because this is how we get to good outcomes, right? Like by talking about these things and like gaming them out in our own heads in concert with other people. Like we have to look at like the unintended consequences to the best of our ability. I would expect an explanation for a no. Yeah, like that's the thing. Even Oracle had to lie to Neo to get the good outcome. This is like, yeah, and you're not wrong, Rudix. Like, you want, Nemesis, you want the AI to tell you the truth all the time, even if you don't like it. And I would like to think that I am also in that camp, but you just have to remember all of the people. Look at all of the people and look at how all of the people are. And this is just us, because a lot of this stuff is going to occur as we get into some future state, and those outcomes as we incrementalize towards this future are going to impact the way that those people, feel about stuff. If our educational system was such that every kid has to go to school, they receive the same level of education, and that education is quality, and that education focuses mostly on critical thinking skills and creative thinking skills and, media literacy and healthy skepticism and a discussion of ideas without the same kinds of judgment and a lot of things that don't exist within our system, then we would have a different kind of people who are having thoughts and opinions and making ideas. You know what I mean? The 48 Laws of Power book, there's a lot of lying. Lots of people mentioned there wouldn't achieve or would achieve nothing without lying. Yeah, like, you're not wrong. Like, like Machiavelli is all about deception and strength, and Sun Tzu has a whole lot of deception in it and like that. Like, just saying, shit ain't easy. Like, this is there is a reason things are the way they are, and what up, Sarah? Deception is a way you can retain agency, yes.
And so I need to pause and talk about how whenever you create an entity, it basically kind of wants to grow. And this is true of every department and every company. This is true of every company. This is true of every politician, every government agency, is they all just kind of want to be bigger. Everything wants to be bigger. And the way that it's kind of characterized is like, it's like cancer. The more you feed it, the bigger it grows. And so you eventually...
This is a particular kind of framing. Like, there is a reason, like, the reason that companies want to grow is because an underpinning of the capitalist model is, eternal growth, right? Like, of X percentage per year forever. Because if you're not growing, you're dying and like that. Government agencies want to grow. Some of it is related to, like, the natural sedentary nature of...
The potential and the peril here are huge.
Thank you for the follow. Of people, like, just expanding their own particular space and power bases and that kind of stuff. But also, usually when we create a government agency, it lacks the size, authority, funding to actually accomplish the goals for which it's intended. And also, as it does its job over time, it becomes more clear that there are certain other aspects of it that are required in order to maybe accomplish the original goal. And that requires more staff, more funding, more reach, more power, these kind of things. So, like, I don't like the referring to the... What up, No Greg? You lead me to my stagnation. I'm going to drag you kicking and screaming into the AI future. When I make you a believer, then I know that my job is accomplished. I will defeat you in the marketplace of ideas. So yeah, it's like, I don't like the equating it with cancer, because cancer is, like, by its by definition, like, generally a bad thing. It kills the people in which it exists, and making that... This is why your boy has a big problem with metaphors in general. I think most of them are clunky at best and completely wrong at worst.
Eventually, some things you just kind of have to starve. But in an AI government, if you actually have one of the policies that it's constantly trying to tune, is it could be having part of that ongoing debate or negotiation is, how big should this entity be?
And you can buy my ideas for only $4.99 a month or free with a Twitch Prime.
And what I mean by big is, how big should its scope be? How big should its role be? How much influence should it have? How much power should it have? Now you might say, well, no robot, no machine is ever going to deliberately make the choice.
Hey. That's what I like about Boyd.
Exactly who we are.
Like my man Old Lobster is just like randomly when he decides he wants to drop the multi-pack, will just bam, here's 5, bam, here's 10, like boom. But Boyd, like I'll drop the shilling, and Boyd's like, yeah, I got you, homie. Thank you, Boyd. As always, I appreciate your support.
Choice to cede power. I don't necessarily agree with that because, like, you can go on to
and you could get the appreciation that I have for people like Old Lobster and Boyd by subscribing for only $4.99 or free with a Twitch Prime. And it's like cheaper right now, right? Like you'd be saving money by investing in the Globus AI lobster gag industrial complex.
Have a discussion with like ChatGPT or Bard or whatever today, and it will have a very nuanced opinion about the appropriate size
Death
and
and
role of
Robots
government.
so much. It was so good.
And because it's dispassionate, because it does not have the human flaws of greed and power seeking, I actually think that the machines, if it made sense and it was the will of the people, that they would cede territory, that they would cede control. If it made sense.
Well, how else can you save money, Old Lobster, right? Like, you can't save money unless you buy the thing. That's how that works. This is America, baby.
Sense too. The next part is rights.
And for new folks, like, I'm totally memeing. Like, I do appreciate the subs. The subs actually get turned back into things that I use to give you better content, better thing. Like I use it to, it pays for the ChatGPT subscription that I use. It pays for the Leonardo AI subscription that I use. It's occasionally buys pieces of technology that improve the quality of the the stream, all this kind of stuff. So like it has a definite effect. And I don't run ads after I do not write code. What you call it? I don't run ads after the pre-roll because I value you learning the stuff more than I value the pocket change that Twitch gives me for I value you learning the stuff. Like that's what's important. I want you to have those conversations and that kind of stuff. When I get the subscriptions and everything else, it's because I feel like you believe in what's happening here and you want access to the cool fucking emotes. Because we got cool fucking emotes. Some of the coolest emotes on Twitch.
Rights and justice. And I think this is actually what people are most concerned about when we talk about AI government is
and
because the last
Don't
thing that
forget
people
the
want
cat.
is to lose rights, or they want the last thing that they want is to end up in a more unjust world. And so you would need part of this government system to not just understand human rights. And a lot of people say, oh, well, we need to all agree on human rights before we can proceed, which is not true. You can come up with an imperfect solution and implement it before it is perfect because it will never be perfect. The demand for a perfect definition before proceeding is a thought-stopping rhetorical thing. So, like, I don't really respect that opinion anymore, especially when you say, like, well, we already have actually a lot of established examples about what rights we do value versus the ones that we don't. But what we need then is an AI system that can take the reins and say, okay, I will ensure that the positive and negative rights that you have already agreed upon are dispassionately enforced and protected, and that they're protected and upheld in the way that you intend. And then part of that ongoing negotiation is, okay, once an AI government can run, can protect the rights and justice of everyone and, get rid of human biases, overcome machine biases, and those sorts of things, it will need to be able to.
Her breath smells like cat food. So I'm going to say that she is just fine.
To detect its own bias as well, by the way. But once you get to that point, then also those other mechanisms, those consensus mechanisms, those democratic feedback mechanisms, that's where the negotiation can happen about, hey, what rights should be added or removed or modified. Or
This is about a AI government. Like if we had AGI running the government of country, world, whatever.
Because
Whatever.
like when you talk to some people, like, it's really interesting some of the debates that I've had where someone's like,
Yeah, no, this is future talk. This isn't like we should strap ChatGPT to your favorite representative and like that.
well, I want the right to live in the country that I want. And so then they get upset because they're not able to unilaterally enforce their will on the entire country, and they don't understand why that's a bad thing, or why it doesn't work that way. So anyways, part of that dialogue is something that an AI government could have directly, because imagine if you can talk directly to like every AI agent that is responsible for running the country, and it can explain to you why things are the way that they are. I think that there would be a lot of people who are a lot happier, because also here's one thing that I kind of perceive when I talk to people about politics, and that is that I think that a lot of people just don't understand why things are the way that they are and why that they're better than they think, and they're also trying to project some of their own problems and make it the responsibility of the government when it was never the responsibility of the government, and that's part of the problem. And what they actually need to do is recognize that the government creates the environment for them to solve their own problems, and that's kind of what we've decided collectively, is rather than have the government solve all of your problems for you, that it creates a healthy environment. Now, obviously,
I absolutely agree, Lady B. Like I am 100% that this is like I'm in favor of that. Like my end state is full labor automation and taking care of people's material needs, and we get to do what we want, that kind of thing.
I recognize that it absolutely does not work for everyone. You could even argue that it doesn't work for most people, which is why people are upset right now. Anyways, it's a very nuanced and difficult thing. But what I'm talking about here is these are some of the problems that will need to be meted out, or not. That's not necessarily the right turn of phrase, but will need to be worked out in creating an AI-based government. And then finally, I think one of the hardest things is just going to be gaining citizen buy-in, building trust over time. So all of this AI government, it's going to need to be transparent. It's going to need to be explainable, which means that any decision that it makes that affects us, we need to be able to understand it. And this is going to be really difficult to balance against a need for privacy and security. Because again, if there's a hostile foreign power, if we're too transparent, it could game our own system against us. Those sorts of things. So it'll need to be resilient against manipulation. We will need to scale up to this if we do get to this point, because we're not going to just rip out the venerated United States Congress and replace it with AI next year. Even if we do have AGI next year, we will need to work up to this over time through smaller demonstrations. We'll need to make sure that people are engaged, because if we do some experiments and people say, actually, we prefer human.
If we outsource this decision-making thinking, even if the life improves, that will make us less intelligent in the long run. I mean, it could. I don't necessarily think that it's an absolute. And part of that will be flavored by like the way that we are under that. Like if we have all our material conditions met, if we aren't worried about survival, if we value things that are human creative for their like artistic value in an environment where we also have the things that we need, then like, will our intelligence evolve in a different way? Like, will we be more creatively intelligent? Will we maybe be less technically intelligent? If, like, will we need humans to understand code? Does the calculator make us worse at basic math? That is absolutely a question. But like, do we want the calculator, or do we want to be good at basic math? When Kurt Gödel, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, emigrated to the U.S., he started arguing with the immigration judge that the U.S. Constitution could be gamed. Yeah, no shit. The judge was going to say he couldn't enter the country until one of his two witnesses spoke up for him. That witness, Albert Einstein. I trust you that because you said true story, it's a true story, but like that sounds like one of the internet memes, and like, that witness, Britney Spears, right? Like, that's kind of playing out in CS curriculums in school. There's a focus on being able to understand correct code in theory, but not being able to write it. And like, should we learn to write code? Not necessarily anyone who works in code now, but like, should an 8-10-year-old be learning code for the purposes of getting a job in code when it's likely that in the future there will be no need for human coders, right? Like, if we continue on this trajectory, then the code written by artificial intelligence will be as good as, if not superior to, the code created by humans. They should learn to code. They should not rely on it for an income. Also, another, possibility is like, and at what point do you go to any particular stage? The internet is a series of pipes. It's a series of tubes, not a dump truck.
Humans, I don't think that it would go that way, especially in the long run. I think that it is, in the long run, I do think it is inevitable that AI will be at least running most of government, if not all of it. But if people are not engaged with that idea, then it doesn't matter because it's not going to happen.
The movies.
And then, of course, we'll need to make sure that it is demonstrated to be reliable over the course of decades, if not centuries. Just by that's just good sense.
To be fair, the movies gave me and TV gave me an overwhelming desire to be good at dealing with quicksand. And quicksand has not yet come up as an issue in my life. Every higher level of code we create is just pushing us further away from writing code. That's the whole point of high level languages. Yeah, I mean, 10, hello world, 20, go to 10, right? Like,
to make sure that you're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And then another part is, even once you have consensus, even like let's imagine that everything that I outlined works. We have technological mechanisms for getting the will of the people, for collecting consensus, for building consensus around rights and justice and equality and equity and justice and fairness and freedom and all that stuff, which that alone is a monumental task. Even just getting to that part is hard enough. And then taking that and implementing it is the next phase, which is why I made this graphic where it's just this monumental problem that would still be before us. Now, even if all that happens and we have machines, if we have, because remember, part of this thought experiment is that we have AGI that is superhuman in capability, which you might say that's actually ASI, and fine, whatever. But imagine that we have machines that are more intelligent than all humans combined, so on and so forth. If anyone could figure it out, it could be them. But one of the problems there is that
I was actually thinking about that today, Samson, when I was driving in the cars. Like, the people in the Discord know that I've been baking a lot of bread lately, right? Like, I've been creating foods from, their, not like, I don't grow wheat to make my bread, but I can bake bread from the base ingredients. And like, how much value does that have? And like, not only in the sense of doing that kind of thing, but like, so there's preservatives in a lot of the foods that we consume, but it also, like, I have had stuff that gets moldy because it's not consumed fast enough. So like is there, it just gives me stuff to think about where I'm doing, that kind of thing. And like, I think bread is one of those places where, like, I would probably bake bread in the AI future. You know what I mean? I would make bread and share it with the people around me. I just wouldn't have to do it for survival.
If they take our will and then they come up with decisions and mechanisms and policies that we don't understand, then we're not necessarily going to believe it. And so this is why I think that coming to human consensus is one thing, but then the machine execution is a whole other ball game. That's a whole other can of worms that is going to be, that's why I said, like, we're going to have to build up trust over time, is because if we have these machines that have, an IQ of 3,000 and they can think abstract thoughts across time and space and multidimensional blah, 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 right? Things that just, like, even the smartest humans would take centuries to understand, if ever, maybe never could understand. It will require a tremendous amount of trust to be able to hand the reins over in such a way, which is why I actually suspect that we will probably want some humans involved in government, maybe forever. I don't know. There might be a time in the future where it's just proven that humans are just fundamentally flawed and either too greedy or too stupid to participate in a government. And I mean, like, centuries from now. This is way too far in the future to really predict. But my point is that coming to consensus is one thing, and then executing on that is an entirely other thing. Okay, so the last part of the video. What are the actual predictions that I have starting today? Where are we going to go from here? So the first thing is that we already have AI driving efficiency in government and in government vendors. So I've talked to a few people, that are connected to me on LinkedIn. They're building tools and services that help the government run better. And so the first thing that we're seeing is just administrative automation, just running paperwork and doing paperwork better and faster and making sure that it actually gets done on time. That has to do with cost efficiency, because rather than hiring 50 employees, you just have an AI firm do it for you. It increases the effectiveness of the service. It increases the throughput of the government services. And so, like, this is kind of the first step in building trust that AI can at least do the mundane nitty-gritty of running government. It's not making decisions right now. It's just processing paperwork. And so this is the very first step in incremental adoption of AI. So baseline automation, great. Now, you might say, well, but what if when you can do that, they throw more at it? Because that's what's called the lump of labor fallacy, which the idea is that there's a finite amount of work to be done, and then once you automate that away, then it's done forever. But that's not how it works, actually. Usually when you have the capacity to do more work, you find more work to do because there's latent unmet demand. But with the progress that AI is making, I would not necessarily make the assumption that there's an infinite amount of government work to do. And in fact, I can predict that some people would say you actually wouldn't want the government to have an infinite amount of work to do. You actually want to get to the point where literally everything that we, the people, want the government to do is done, and then it can, take a break or whatever. But right now, because of the scarcity of cognitive labor, we can never get to that point. So AI will hopefully drive the government to be more efficient, to catch up on all the paperwork, and start to shrink in terms of human headcount. So this is happening. It's not fully happening today. It's starting to happen today, where there are people that are serving government in terms of either contractors or implementing systems inside the government. Obviously, the adoption is very slow and methodical, but ChatGPT is out there, and we know that people in the government are using ChatGPT at the very least. The next thing is, and this might already be happening, but we don't really know because no politician is going to admit it, but it's entirely possible that they're using stuff like ChatGPT to draft and read legislation. Basically, this means that you can write longer bills, which is not necessarily a good thing, because we don't necessarily want 5,000-page bills being introduced every single day, especially if they're being written by AI and then read by AI and humans are out of the loop. Eventually that might be the case, but we need to build up to that and trust it. But it is eminently possible. Because, if you've watched my channel like earlier this year and last year, what I would...
Okay. Like, I'm watching, right? Y'all are having a constructive conversation. You're getting a little snarky at the end of it, and it's like, whatever, right? But then, like, the heretic got me. In a way, we're kind of already in that, old lobster, in that, like, I take my phone to the tech priests at You Break, I Fix, and they apply the salves and chant the whatevers. I have no idea what they do. I understand. I'm memeing. Like, because I have like long ago, I took my phone apart to make it do stuff and put it back together. Like, I physically took apart my own phone. And I probably wouldn't do that now. You know what I mean? Now I rely on the systems that are in place to fix my phone as opposed to fixing it myself, all that kind of stuff. And there is a departure from the process by which we understand how these things are created and how they can be repaired. And I mean, theoretically, I could be an AI if we figure out the whole full brain transfer thing, but is there a trust issue in what, Nemesis?
Would do is I would take like new pieces of legislation or whatever and just feed it to GPT. And if I'm doing that, that the politicians are too. And so this can accelerate the negotiation and revision of legislation. Whether or not that's a good thing remains to be seen. But what it can also do is it can...
But if my intelligence becomes artificial, don't I become the AI? And what if CAT actually spells dog?
Empower us to say, oh, hey, send out your personal agent to go read the bills that are being proposed or the bills that have been passed. And you can say, hey, actually, I have more information. And this also goes back to Socrates, which is an informed and educated and empowered electorate is actually required to have a functioning, healthy democracy. And so even if some of the aspects of AI participating in the drafting and revision of legislation are problematic, the fact that AI can read it infinitely faster than humans, and we can say like, okay, which parts do I agree with? Which parts do I disagree with? What are the flaws? What are the general principles here? Where does it violate principles? This again, it has to do with streamlining the process of government, of passing legislation and debating it. Again, remember, democracy is noisy by design. And so part of that is the debate. Part of that is the negotiation. And this is something that if it's not happening today, which I'm pretty sure it is eminently possible and should be. And I'm not saying should is a value statement, but I mean, should be happening soon just as a matter of prediction. And then the next phase, this is not happening yet, but this would be another major milestone, which is the integration of AI into justice. And of course, When you look at like preventative policing things, it's like, ooh, this could go real bad because if AI is trained on racist data, guess what? It becomes racist AI. So there's a lot that we need to do. However, when you look at the administrative aspect where it's just processing paperwork, this is the kind of thing where civil attorneys, criminal defense attorneys, prosecutors, judges, they're all probably going to be using AI. And if not now, then soon. And so then these AI tools, these AI systems that are going to be integrated into the Justice Department, that will probably expand over.
Yeah, if you're aware, then I apologize. But there is already like sentencing guidelines driven by AI in certain jurisdictions that contains flawed, bias data in its data set. So it's producing flawed outcomes already. And that's why when he said that this is not happening, it's like it already is a little bit happening. I don't know like to what level it's happening. Politico did a whole thing on it. It's not ideal.
Over time, because if they find that it makes their job easier, if it makes their job better, if the outcomes are more fair, obviously there are probably no regulations around this, right?
There's another question within like designing your own AI governmental system is if the AI could be proven to be like, again, like I don't know if unbiased or equally biased is better. My guy says equally biased, so whichever one of those serves the best purpose. If it was found that the AI for justice was like equitably dispensing justice, would you prefer an AI judge or a human judge?
Right now, and I can imagine that there are plenty of people in government, in law, that are like, they're purists that are like, no, like we will never use this. But like the fact of the matter is I know plenty of lawyers who use AI on a regular basis. So if lawyers are using it, then judges are probably using it, then DAs are probably using it. Everyone's going to be using it. So then it's a matter of making sure that these systems are safe and robust.
These are the questions, and that's why we're talking about them, right? Equitable according to whom? Like, do we want these Star Trek where there are no laws except the one law, and if you break the one law, straight to death, or do you want to, like, where all crime, 1 out of every 10 person is found, The one law in the episode of Star Trek The Next Generation was don't walk on these flowers, and Wesley fell into the flowers because of course he did, and then he was going to be murdered by the AI in the Utopia. Yeah, no, and when I say the AI, I'm talking about whatever one, is applicable in any, like, my idea of what the AGI will look like is a series of narrow AIs and a governor AI that chooses the best narrow AI for any particular task. And like extrapolate that and scale it up.
And that justice is meted out fairly, and it becomes increasingly fair over time, that it becomes increasingly equitable over time and reflects the actual values and principles that we have. But
Ask Jeeves, like, oh, it kills me because now is the time for Ask Jeeves to make a comeback. If you had an AI called Ask Jeeves and it was like a chatbot that was your personal assistant and it spoke with a British voice, like now is its time. Now it's here and it's just ask.
Part of this transition would be moving away from human biases, overcoming human biases. Because what if you could have like another layer in the Justice Department that looks at all the decisions that a judge makes and says, actually, that's kind of a racist decision, or actually, that's kind of a sexist decision. Maybe we need to, review that. I think it would be great if justice departments had internal review boards that were augmented by AI. Why? Because then I think that activist judges could probably be reined in. You could also think like, what if AI was surveilling judges who write warrants? Because you always hear horror stories of judges who will write warrants for everything, and then homes get swatted and babies get hit with flashbang grenades. That's actually a thing that happens here in America. So yeah, like I think that there is an opportunity for AI to make the Justice Department more fair. Now, obviously, the flip side of that is pointing AI and creating a surveillance state that uses AI to police us. But this is the question of who watches the watchers. I think that AI should watch them more than it watches us. That's the surveillance state that I want to see, where the AI holds government accountable, all offices of government more accountable. And that's kind of what I'm talking about here. And the next is the executive branch. So here's Joe Biden going bonkers with some AI written legislation, which, oh, by the way, I'm pretty sure.
It just kills me. The Dave Shapiro's AI art is not, beating the bad hands fucking allegations.
Or that the longest executive order that has ever been written was written in part with AI, and it was about AI. Go figure. Anyways, again, because I know I have talked to people in the diplomatic corps in the State Department who are using AI, it's already happening. So this is not really a prediction, but my anticipation is that usage is going to expand over time, and that more and more aspects of the government will be eminently automatable, and that we might switch to more of human oversight or human steering. And these AI, whether it's AI tools that are passive or AI agents that are semi-autonomous or fully autonomous, will be responding to the will of humans, the electorate that we empower. And who knows, maybe a hybrid system is what we're going for, where, the politicians that we elect then go use AI to do all the debates and it makes them more effective. I don't know. Like I said, I kind of anticipate that eventually humans are going to be the main bottleneck, and that eventually we're just going to want humans out of government. But that decision should be our decision, the people's decision, not the AI's decision and not the politicians' decision. Anyways, but basically then kind of the one potential final form is that the humans are basically just kind of caretakers. That the humans that we elect, we might still have a president, a million years from now, probably not. But if we did, then the president is like, their primary job is going to be to implement, the will of the people by way of the machines. I don't know. We'll see how it turns out. So very finally, here's some of the milestones that I kind of anticipate and would be on the lookout for. So first, adoption in government. Like I said, there's plenty of evidence that it's already happening. And this is year zero, right? Like ChatGPT came out just over a year ago. So we're technically just started year one of AI. The more that AI participates in the democratic process, the more we will be transitioning naturally towards an AI government. Again, we're already there. We're already in the process of transitioning to an AI-run government. It's just happening behind the scenes. It's not happening transparently, but it's happening organically. It is naturally emerging just because AI is a new set of tools, and well, humans are humans, and they're going to use tools to make their lives easier. So that is all happening. And it's just a matter of degrees. Like I said at the beginning of the video, a lot of this is a matter of scope and degrees and an organic process over time. So the very first major milestone will be any offices that are either shuttered, like where a human officer is no longer needed because the need for them is just replaced by an AI platform, or even more where like a human officer just might be replaced by a collection of AI agents. That is going to be one of the most pivotal milestones that we see. And there's probably going to be several ways that this expresses. So it remains to be seen how that will happen. But you can imagine quite a few ways that it's like, oh, hey, maybe the FDA gets replaced by AI. That's what I mean. Like, what if you shut down the entire FDA and replace it with an AI version? Like, that's the kind of thing that I would be looking for, is what is the first office or department that gets either completely reconfigured or reimagined or shut down due to AI. The next one is consensus mechanisms. So obviously we pretty much only have voting right now. So as AI becomes integrated into those democratic dialogues,
IRS is definitely one of the ones that I see, because like on one hand, there's already indications of increased automation in tax filings, right? Like how people do their taxes, and having AI on the opposite end is almost like a requirement then. And also like the AI will be able to outpace the human CPAs who, do stuff and juggle the books. It can handle that level of complexity without like getting tired or bored or any of the crap that happens to humans. So within that context, IRS is, and also IRS suffers from a lack of manpower to execute their things, like all their stuff. So you could, and well, this is one of those things, Rudix, is that like our concept of privacy is built around these ideas where there are things about me that I do not wish other people to know because of like shame judgment cycles or power leverage or those kind of things. I hope we get to a future where people can be more authentically themselves publicly. I think it will produce a much more healthy, mentally speaking, human race.
Into those consensus, into that polling mechanism, that is going to be another major milestone. And I think that that's more eminently possible because just collecting sentiment, like, Pew Research polls, right? Like they're not part of the government, but they are responsible for collecting sentiment. And so what if like they create an AI platform that is better at detecting sentiment, and then, government employees and government departments use that as part of their process. And so then the very final major milestone, again, because this is a matter of human decision, is once the voters' sentiment change, and once we say, actually, we're really on board with the idea of getting rid of politicians or shutting down parts of the government and replacing it with AI, that's going to be the major tipping point. That's the major milestone. Because once the will of the people is that strong, I'm not going to say it's inevitable because obviously we should expect politicians to probably fight to maintain the status quo because that's what they do. But that's also part of their job, is to resist change. But again, if we get to the point where it's like we rewrite the Constitution to allow for machines to participate in government, like that would be really cool. So thanks for watching. I hope you got a lot out of this. Thanks to Spectral Valkyrie for suggesting the video topic. Have a good one, everyone.
I got a new sweater from Microsoft.
You got a sweater from Microsoft? Okay, so that's going to be it for today. We're doing like normally we would watch the Matt Wolf 3 minutes 38. Oh yeah, the field test scene. Go ahead and watch that on your own. I gotta get off here because we're gonna be doing movie night in the Discord, and it is already 8:25, and I have to do a couple things before I fire that up. Discord is hurting. We will see. Maybe like I tried to give you what you wanted, old lobster, and now we might not be able to watch what you wanted. But my Discord is currently looks like it's working. So we're going to try. And if not, then we'll try again. Monday, we're going to be talking to Tellerx about Rocco's Basilisk and the idea of AI cults. So that should be a good one. Always like talking to them. Because it is Friday and we always need to expand who we raid into in order to hopefully get new viewers, new people interested. This is Sophie's Galaxy. Sophie Galaxy does music. They're also a fun, entertaining, pleasant person. If you got someplace else to be, stick around for the raid and then be on about your way. Otherwise, Sophie does good music. Yeah. It's digital stuff. It sounds like breakbeat at the moment. And I will see you all Monday. If I'm not seeing you in Discord for movie night, probably within the half hour. Just I got to knock some things out. And in the meantime, drink your water. And also, thank you to all the new people who showed up today. All the people, and appreciate the community keeping your conversations like civil. Thank you. I love being a part of this community, and you make it happen. Drink your water. Eat some food. Take your meds if you forgot. Chuggy loves you. So do I. Be great.